Okay, so let's call the meeting to order. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is John, Steve, and Linda with an introduction.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Town Hall for the DMA Light Study, which is a review of one of the biggest part of our balance sheet, all our fixed assets, buildings, equipment, fixtures, and what we've done, this process has been led by Linda Martin with support from Steve and finance, as well as all the department heads. We do have all the department heads scheduled today to come in and answer questions as posed by budget and finance and anybody in the audience. This has been a process that's been ongoing for several months. A lot of work has been done. I noticed B&F, the budget and finance team, has put in a lot of hours on this, reviewing it. And they're here today, and they'll probably have more questions. Linda and Steve will answer them. I am here also. I will summarize it all together where we're at. But at the end of this process, we will have a valuable financial tool in order for us to manage as well as do the budget process. So one of the key parts at the end is to see where we stand with our replacement reserves, bulkheads, et cetera, so that we can see when we do the budget whether or not we need money for that. All righty. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Linda, who is leading this process, and she'll work through.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Originally, DMA did the presentation, as you know, back in 2015-16. Okay. 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 Yes. Well, then they're muted now. They're both muted. Okay. DMA was originally given the reserve study, conducted the original reserve study in 2015-2016. The last study was conducted in 2018. With this study, DMA was started his process in April, visiting the OP facilities and the site visits. That was a week-long process. The timeline was April 12th through 15th. DMA was there to view the components and met with the department heads. July 2nd, the reserve study first draft was received. In July and August, the draft was reviewed by the department heads, and then the changes sent to DMA. And then on August 24th, we received the second draft. Also provided to you was the timeline that corresponds with our timeline from DMA that he provided to me last evening. The final working draft was sent to us on September 23rd and distributed to everyone here today. Okay.
So just to outline all that is from the last time we did construction on several buildings, renovations, different equipment was purchased. So we just felt it was a good time. What are we, about 4 years out from the last one, 4 or 5 years, which we said originally we would do, for us to update this and fine tune it. And we believe we've done that.
Does anyone have any questions, or should we just proceed with Doug doing his presentation since we can hear him?
Any initial questions?
Okay. Okay, Doug, you can go ahead. We'll at least be able to hear you. So you can start with your overall presentation.
She's saying if you could just go ahead and do your presentation, Doug.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen so you'll see that. See if you'll see that. Hopefully you will. Do you see a cover of the General Reserve Study?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And actually, I'm going to move from that to, well, first of all, my introduction. to the beginning of original construction of buildings. And that was the primary basis for the reserve components. One aspect of an asset detail is a record of expenditures, which doesn't always conform directly to a definition of an asset. So we do have components in the reserve study that are not necessarily specified in that book, but that we needed to define separately as an asset that needs replacement. So we have kind of a hybrid between your book asset detail and other components that we identified on site. The study was, and that is defined here, the study was called a level 1 study, meaning that I think you had a study previously or studies previously, but we essentially started from scratch in 2015 and developed a new complete schedule of components for the 3 reserve accounts. In 2018, we were asked to come back and do what's called a level 3 update, which is just a financial update of the previous study. That doesn't involve a site visit or any other physical analysis of the components. It's basically just a study where you send us information that has changed since the previous study, and we update the component list with that new information, those revisions, and then we, of course, apply the current, at the time, what is currently using as the inflation rate and interest income rate to that account, and we and also update our cost projections. I will say that many of the components, a majority of the components, the costs are based on that asset with detail, based on the cost when you purchased it, and then that cost is adjusted over time with inflation to a future cost. There are other assets that, as I said, we're not defined in that detail, and we apply estimated costs to from our own estimating. So all of our estimated costs are updated in a level 3 update, as well as any component information provided by you folks. At that time, when we did that update, we completed that update, and then after that, the association came back and said we would like to do a baseline study, and I'm going to explain that in a minute when I go to the actual spreadsheets for comments on the general reserve study in early August and issued a second draft. We had more comments from the second draft and issued a third draft in mid-September. And there was one more round of changes provided at that time. Actually, mid-September, we issued what is the current draft that you have on September 23rd. Following that, we received additional input on the bulkhead study, basically just changing projected dates, and there were some projected dates for bulkhead replacement, and also a few additional changes on corrections on last in service dates for the bulkheads. So we then reissued the bulkhead study. And that's pretty much bringing us to today. You folks provided us a list of 5 questions about the study, which I have responded to. And we can discuss that in any more detail that you'd like to today. And one of the questions that I said I would answer today is how we arrived at 3.8% annual increase. And I will say that's preliminary. That's not necessarily intended to be a final recommendation of the general reserves account. So that brings us up to today. By way of introduction, I guess, to the reports, those of you who have been involved with us going back to at least 2018 and possibly earlier know that our reports previously had all been basically the study had been performed in an Excel format, spreadsheet study. We actually began at the end of 2018 developing our new software, which is a database software, which has more capabilities than the spreadsheet software did, and have developed our new report format in this database software, which I'll demonstrate in a couple of minutes. Because we can produce information in many different ways, we have limited we issue what's called an executive summary, which is the primary report for each reserve account. And then we have supplemental reports, which are just provided to give additional information and data on the reserve components and on the study without rolling that all into the executive summary. So that's why we gave you 4 reports for each of the accounts. The executive summary. One of our starting points is identifying what we're doing, a synopsis of the community, and a synopsis of the starting point on the financial side. Every reserve study, when we're developing a funding plan, has to have a starting point, which is your existing funding today. So we started studying at the beginning reserve account balance at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Hold on, Doug. I think Doug is on page 9 of the agenda. Sorry. 9 of 127. Go ahead, Doug.
Go ahead. Okay. So we have a starting balance at the beginning of the fiscal year. We always use the beginning balance at the beginning of the year so that anything that happens that year will occur after that balance and will be deducted from that balance in terms of reserve expenditures. We do, for communities, and most communities do this, take the earnings that they have from the money that's on deposit. And put that back into the reserve account. We will show an average rate for that. This number can be updated and adjusted as necessary. But this is the projection we're showing for an average earnings rate on the reserve account funds on deposit. And then we establish what your budgeted contribution for the current study year is, 2021 in this case. We had as $1,647,559. Page after that, this is a quick summary of comparison of the current study on the right flag that hits right away is how do we get from 2,588 components to 922 components? And I answered that in my response to questions, but to briefly go over that again, there were over 1,100 components in the 2,588 number, which were actually included in the 2018 report, which had been zeroed out because for one of two reasons. One, they were either under $5,000 in value, and the committee at that time decided that we should remove components that were less than $5,000 in value. Also components that were no longer going to be replaced. We had quite a number of components related to the existing, at that time, the existing golf course clubhouse, which we zeroed out all of those components. At the time, we didn't have any information on a new clubhouse, so those components that was a net reduction, and we didn't have any new components to add at that time. Those came out, and then we had a little more attrition from the markups that the departments gave us on components that have been removed from service. And we, as a means simplifies and simplifying our reports, took components that were basically related to each other and would normally be replaced all at the same time, and put those into groups or assemblies, as we called them. So we reduced the total number of line item components by that method, by creating a number of assemblies for various components. So that eventually got us down to the 922 line items. Of note, I think, is the fact that of the 1,100 components that we took out, and then with what we had put back in, we really only saw a very small reduction in the estimated total value of all the components. The majority of components that were less than $5,000, and I can say they range from $4,900 down to a few $100s. The total of all those was probably between $200,000 and $300,000 total. So, against a $38 million asset value, that they really were somewhat negligible. The reserve account balance was a little higher in 2018 than it is at the beginning of this year. Both studies were 30-year cash flow studies. We were looking out 30 years to project what the expenditures are likely to be in that time frame, and then developing a funding plan to fund those for the 30-year period. We do incorporate inflation, and I know one of the questions was how we arrived at that inflation rate. And I answered that with the three sources that we use, which are nationally recognized sources for tracking construction inflation. That is we call a builder cost index. It is inflation related specifically to the construction industry, which is for the vast majority of your components are the types of items that type of inflation that would affect the items that are in your assets. The inflation rate we used was at the beginning of 2021. Obviously, this year has seen a lot of things happening with inflation. We have not updated that rate yet. We will in 2022. It will go up, but we are also looking at, and we're also in the process of developing a longer-term inflation projection that relies more on the historical trends in inflation over time, so that we don't simply apply, this year's revenue spike in inflation. We don't want to apply that spike to all future years. The recommended by second year means we had your budget year, what you were already putting in the reserves, and then we made a recommendation in 2018 for a number above that. That number is actually a little lower in 2021, the recommendation. And both of those studies, This study, of course, this part of the study, which is a cash flow study, is a.
Hey, Doug, Doug?
Yes, yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about the difference between the transfer rate and the inflation rate, specifically, why they're different?
Well, the transfer rate is what we calculate that you need to do in order to fund all of the replacement projects over the whole life of the study. It is obviously driven in part by the inflation rate because if you look at this graph, all of these red bars in the graph are future expenditures that we're looking at based on the analysis of the component analysis that we did for all of the reserve components. So we see it as there's obviously going to be an up and down projection on different costs in different years, and we have some years that have higher projections. All of these bars are future costs, meaning these are all, when we establish the estimated replacement value of a component in this year, we then take that and inflate that at that inflation rate of 3.08%. And these bars will represent the future value of those replacements. So inflation is incorporated in this graph. And that these numbers are all future values, essentially. We'll look at that in a little more detail in a minute as well. The gray bars in this graph are showing the projected end-of-year account balance on the reserve account. And a cash flow study is designed to allow it to go up and down as your expenditures vary, but always keep it above a minimum level. And as I mentioned, we had been using a threshold study. And I actually realized when I sent you for both bulkheads and roads, I believe our threshold studies would show a 1% minimum threshold. This I kept at 0%, so this is a baseline study. If we establish a threshold, again, that means we're establishing a minimum value that we don't want the account to go below. We had been using 1% of the total expenditures over the life of the study. That was in the past two studies. We had been using that as a definition of that threshold. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute when I get into the live software. But this is showing just keeping the account above zero. And as you can see, I'm actually considerably above zero here with that 3.8% annual increase in contribution. So essentially, I have kept a minimum amount in the study, and we will play with that number in a minute. But this graph in this report is shown 3 times, 3 separate pages. Each page then, the graph is highlighted with a little gray area here, which is a 10-year period, and the 10 years are shown in the table right below the graph. Starting in 2021 with your beginning reserve balance, your budgeted contribution, your interest income on the funds on deposit, and then we subtract the expenditures that we projected for that this year, and that gives us then the year balance, which is carried forward. We do the same thing again, so that's what's essentially happening here. And you will see the 3.8% below that, which is increasing this reserve contribution by that amount each year. And then you see the 0.5%, which is the number that's used to calculate the investment.
Thank you.
That is the cash flow study. Very briefly, we published an assessment application.
I couldn't hear the last part of your explanation.
Hey, Doug?
5.5%.
Hey, Doug?
Yes.
I couldn't hear the last part of your explanation when you said there's a 3.0% increase each year, and then you said something about 0.5%.
That's garbled, I'm sorry.
Well, Doug, he's asking for an explanation on the 0.5% that is in that line there.
Okay. That is the assumed percentage, an aggregate earnings percentage of all of those funds that are on deposit.
Okay.
Meaning,
All right.
Oh, that's good.
That's the interest.
in any year, we show a balance, and we're showing the projected earnings rate from that money. So sitting in whatever accounts are sitting in, whether it's money market accounts or CDs, et cetera.
So Doug, if I can jump in once again, so the transfers are increasing at a rate of 3.8%, and the spending is increasing at a rate of 3.08%. Philosophically, could you talk a little bit about, the bridge, why one, one is a bit higher than the other, the 3.8 versus 3.08? Philosophically, what's driving that? Is it to make sure the bars stay at a certain level, or what?
It's because you are essentially underfunded somewhat, meaning that if the funding was considered adequate for everything that is projected to happen, yes, you can make the broad assumption that the annual increase should equal the inflation rate. So since you're asking those questions, let me go ahead and move to the actual software, so we can talk about that. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction into the software itself and what we're doing with it, and then I'll get to exactly what's happening with that projected increase. Everything in this study is broken down, number one, by the type of facility and location, verification, or department that is in this administration, and then that is broken down into various subgroups. Each group is broken down into some components, which are listed here, and each component is broken down to a component page like this. I think some of you may be aware of the fact that we are our long-term goal. I actually had hoped to be there this year, but it's going to be in late 2022 now, just with the time that it takes to develop this software. We are going to have an online access available to our clients, so that we would be able to actually access these component pages and update information in them as time goes on. But each component page will be a record of that item, what it is, where it is, if it's quantified, what that quantity is, when it was last put in service, what the estimated useful life is, and we have a section called replacement interval, which means that we can adjust the life projections after the first replacement. Set a different, feel it's appropriate, set a different time right for the second and future replacements. We have an estimated cost. This is a component that we have estimated, so we have a unit cost, meaning that we have measured 620 square feet for these windows, and we have a square foot replacement cost. All of our costs are based on a location. Generally, most of them are in Richmond, Virginia, and so we then have a city ratio that adjusts that value to an equivalent value where you are located in your zip code. And that gives us a unit cost for you at Ocean Pines. We then take that unit cost times the quantity, times the percent replaced, which is normally going to be 100%, and times client responsibility, which is normally going to be 100% reimbursed. And that gives us a replacement cost in the study. So that's basically 48.85 times 6. It's a $30,000 replacement cost. Now, we then look to this is a component dating to 1985. We look at 50 years, and that gives us a replacement in 2035. We apply our inflation rate to that, and that gives us a estimated future replacement cost of $46,294. Now we have, let me see if I can show you a different component here. Where we have components that either provided a previous cost for that component, in your asset book, we are going to list that as a documented cost here, and we provide the year of that cost, what that cost was, and then that is adjusted. Number one, to give us a replacement value in 2021 pumps, in a previous study, we listed the split system heat pump has an exterior condenser and an interior air handler. We find these are normally replaced at the same time together. So we have put them in assembly together. So these two components now become one line item component for the replacement of that system. So that's essentially how the assembly works. This study. I'm going to go ahead to the cash flow study.
Yeah, sure, Gene. Doug, we have a question.
Yes.
On the assembly, can the subcomponents of an do I need this? Oh, on the assemblies, can the subcomponents, if they aren't replaced together, can they be done by?
Very quickly remove that from the assembly. We can disassemble any components like that and have them show up as individual line item components if they are not replaced together.
Okay, thank you.
So we can track that.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'm going to take this 2.8% out, and it will take a moment for this to recalculate. And so what I'm going to do is first of all show you what happens to the reserve funding if we take the escalation out and just keep it at the current budgeted contribution. One of the things that, as I said, we're constantly updating this software. The present version we're using takes several seconds for calculations to complete. That's going to probably go away in a month from now. We will have more instantaneous calculations. Right now, it takes a little bit of time.
So you're changing 3.8 to what, Doug?
Just zero. In other words, no change here. That is what happens when we go to transfer reserves. That's the 1,000,006 every year. And what you see is that is not enough to sustain this reserve account over a 30-year period. So that's why we calculated an increase. If I do an increase, but before I do that, let me show you some expenditures. We can show any year. This is 2024, and show what the projected reserve expenditures are in that year. These are all the component costs that make up the red bar in that year. And again, these dollar values, if you take a given component and compare this cost to the current year replacement costs in the scheduled components, this will be higher because it's been adjusted for inflation. Let me just click in on that as an example. So that was boardwalk on the beach side of the beach club. We had a previous replacement cost. We have a current estimated replacement cost and a future replacement cost. And we have actually two replacement cycles occurring within a 30-year study period on this particular component. So I can look at something, let's just take the 3.08%. That may work with this baseline study. Let's just recalculate it at the inflation rate. Okay, so what you see is that at the inflation rate, it holds up a little talked about in terms of the threshold is we have been working with a 1% threshold. I'm going to just put that in here. Okay. And that's going to move this yellow line to, and we calculate that 1% a little differently now. Calculate that as a percentage of the one-time replacement value of all the components in the study. However, the threshold is defined numerically. It is an arbitrary number. There's no law that says that you have to have a threshold by any amount. There's no standard in the industry for this. The purpose of having a threshold again is to develop a funding plan, which is designed to never draw the account down to $0. I think at one point, I'm not sure if this board originally had $7 million as a minimum threshold. Sticks in my mind. I'm not sure if that was a clear number. So here's a threshold at 1% of those, of the total value of all the reserves. And that's setting minimum threshold line. Again, this plan of just going up at the inflation rate doesn't do that. I can take it up to 4%. And once this recalculates, I'll show you another page which may help define that for you. That's just in terms of why it's underfunded. But I guess to summarize, this is not, this recommendation is not based on an opinion, it's simply based on doing the math of the 30 years with the projected costs, the inflation rate, and the earnings rate. Okay, so 3.4 did not do it either. So before I change that again, let me show you, we gave you a fourth report called the full funding report. And what that is just looking at your current percent funded for your current reserve account balance. So we look at your current reserve account balance of $3,009,000. When I say current, I mean at the beginning of the fiscal year. This is current fiscal year. $3,009,000. And then we look at all of the reserve components and all of the expected lives of those components, replacement costs of those components, and said, if you were fully funding those components, meaning that at any point in time, let me give an example. If you have a $10,000 component to replace and you're going to replace it in 2 years, you should put $1,000 a year in towards that component. This is discounting inflation. Let's just say for simple explanation. You're putting $1,000 a year in toward that component. And if you're in year 6 of that component's life, you should have $6,000 in the account towards that component. That component would then be considered fully funded. So we do that calculation for all of the components, but in the calculation we do make an adjustment for the future value of that component, and not just the current value. And that gives us an expended, if you were fully funded for these components at this point in time, you would have a $20 million reserve account. You don't. You have just under $4 million reserve account. So the deficit is $17 million. And that is why, and that sounds pretty extreme, but when we do an actual cash flow study, it doesn't mean that you have to come up with all kinds of money. It just means that you have to increase at a faster rate than the inflation rate. And that's what this is showing. And to 7%. You see where I'm going with this? I'm just trying to calculate this so that it solves the funding needs over the 30-year period.
The answer is.
Used to be Excel based. That's crazy.
Some of us can remember days just to make punch cards and wait a day for some answer to come back.
There we go.
So there, you see what it's at the trying to do, and add that 3.8%. So what I sent you, 3.7 would actually, if we consider this a baseline study, that would be above zero, so that would work. I had projected the 3.8%, I should bring it back to that.
Yeah, I guess I see where I think we all see where we got the 3.82, and I think it's 3.8 seems like a reasonable value.
Okay, so there's a couple things I just need to sign off on being that. Are you comfortable with the 3.8, 15? Okay.
You can hear that again.
How about the interest rate and the inflation rate?
I think the interest rate is conservative, and I'm okay with the conservative part of it. Yes.
So what is the interest rate? Is what? It's a fraction of a fraction?
0.5%.
Okay, so just to put it all in perspective, so the interest rate, BNF has signed off on the contribution of the transfer rate of 3.8. So I'm just asking on the interest rate. And Doug, the interest rate you used near each was how much? A fraction of a fraction?
I usually ask you folks what you think your earnings rate is. I don't have a way of knowing that. Obviously, money market accounts in the past year,
I got the answer.
couple of years.
What is that, 0.5%? No, I know what we're earning, but what has he got there? 0.5%? Okay, so. Right. Right. So he went with 0.5%. As Tom pointed out, and Steve and I know, we're earning, Steve, what are we earning? About 0.8. Yeah, we're 0.75%. Right, and we're doing better. And we have a very good relationship with the bank. But what I want to tell BNF and everybody else, just to put it in perspective, because rates and even inflation are going up, but 1% of a balance of $4 million is what, Steve? 40,000. So this is not a big number if we're off a fraction of a fraction, but I'm open to whatever BNF says. Okay. All right. But again, it's only 10, 20,000. All right, great. And then there was the inflation number, which obviously, we can't tell each year, but he's got 3.08. Is your team?
My sense is that that's the best numbers Doug is giving us right now. I don't have better numbers. Counter that with.
Yeah, I can tell you the numbers we're looking at preliminarily right now, just for the beginning of the year. We're probably looking at a current rate between 4 and 5%. Construction inflation. As you may, if you keep track of the news, the CPI rate is actually up around just under 5%. And it has been at the beginning of this year, it was under 2%. So, but we do also think that's a spike. So I don't know that we're going to look at this from a long view, and I don't know that we would project it for 4.5% rate over the 30-year period. That's why we want to get our analysis of that.
Right. And obviously, just in the last, since we began this project, you can see inflation, and we have identified inflation, even with our operating budget that we'll be working on. It's definitely a headwind. So, at this point, I mean, Doug, from your standpoint, that three and a fraction, you're okay with that? Before BNF.
Yeah, I was just saying we have not officially changed our numbers. I'm happy
Right.
if you can look at this at a higher rate if you want to. All these are adjustable.
Right. So, Dick, it's your call. I mean,
Don had a question.
Doug, should the first 3 or 4 years be a higher inflation rate because we know inflation seems to be going that way and then dwindle down over afterwards?
That is actually the projection we're working on. We're working on I guess, a regression analysis, if you will, which is going to project a rate that starts at the current rate and then adjusts over time to a longer term rate. We don't have that analysis built into the study yet. We will have by the beginning of the year.
So this will be updated at the beginning of the year?
We can update it, yes, that's fine.
so,
If you look out over the life of the study here, probably averages out. But you also have the buffer of the 3.8 in there, in addition on top of the inflationary explosion. So you do have a buffer.
okay, so we're going to stay with that for now. Obviously, even at the end of the year, while we're doing the budget process, Steve, myself, we can extrapolate or make an adjustment or reach out to DMA to do a calculation. But we'll look at that as part of the process. Okay, Dick? Doug? All right, good. We have a question from Gene Ringsdorf.
I'm the public here. I would like to know, Doug, you mentioned some costs that you saw that weren't fixed assets on our records, but you decided to include them in the study as assets. Could you give me an example of those?
I didn't hear that well.
I think what she is asking is there's certain items in the study that aren't in the fixed assets rule. Can you give an example of some of those items?
Sure. Basically, when you look at this schedule, if I have this documented cost, if I have a documented cost, those were from your fixed asset list. If I have a component that doesn't have that, it's going to be components we measured on site. The reason this exists is that the fixed asset list is not a true asset list. It's actually a record of money spent on capital projects in a community. And sometimes that money spent is, you can have a major construction project, and that project, which might include, for example, these light poles and fixtures, will show up as a number as part of a large construction expenditure in your asset list, but it's not broken out to the various items that were included in that. We don't have any way of knowing how that breaks out. So, and the items that may have been built at that one point in time are going to have different life expectancies. So we have to go and when we can't find a one-to-one correlation, if you will, between an asset that we see and something on your asset list, we're going to schedule it separate. That's the only way we can kind of relate it to, from our standpoint, projecting future replacement programs.
To the extent that our total cost may say include that component that you can't see, but you desire to have, that component that you desire to have on your list, aren't you overstating the asset base? What I'm saying, Doug, is to the extent that our asset members may in fact include the cost of these components that you can't see, but you like to have it on the list, and now you've created an additional layer of costs, would you be overstating our total asset base?
I would say no, because there are some costs that are just, if we see a very generalized item in the asset list that we can't define, we're not going to include that item at all in the study. And then we're going to go and pick out and break out the components separately.
Okay.
It's a little bit of an art.
So, so Gene and BNF and Steve will jump in with me. Anytime we've had anything and anything we've capitalized, we don't put that kind. At least Steve and I don't. We haven't put stuff in there that we don't believe is a capital in nature type of item. Does that help? We don't. Anything that Steve and I have done, we have not put anything in there to capitalize that's not a capitalizable component or a piece. So I understand what you're saying about going way back, but I mean, we're not doing that. If we notice it, we'll adjust. But right.
If I think what you're saying, Gene, if there's a large project out there for $3 million, it's one lump sum, and obviously part of that are these subcomponents. They identify these subcomponents, and they say we want to account for these because we want to place them at different intervals. You're saying, are they adding those in on top of the large project? I guess I would hope that if there is that large project and they're adding subcomponents in, that they're reducing the amount of that large project so that the dollars stay the same.
I didn't catch if that was being done.
Well, that's the question. Understand what I'm saying, Steve? Okay.
So like, for example, I guess, these capital projects we had the last couple of years, Doug, we gave you the fixed asset list for that, which breaks it down into components and whatnot. So you're obviously not going to observe and include anything related to the clubhouse or the cart barn or the police station, but you're talking about some of the capital projects for the other areas that were grouped, several years before, and we do not capture when the fixed assets register. It might be, I guess, donated property, things like that we would still need to replace. Is that a good? So I guess, sorry to interrupt, but so then the question becomes, we give you the information based on the draws. When you came here and observed the clubhouse, were you able to break it down into the subcomponents for the reserve study purpose?
Elements of the building that need to be replaced over time to keep the reserve studies identifying the items that need to be replaced periodically to maintain.
So in essence, you're suggesting that items like the superstructure, the foundation, the engineering costs, and the like are not replaceable, won't be replaced. It's the HVAC systems, it's the lighting, power, freshwater, wastewater systems that are the type of components that you're looking at that would be replaced over time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I understand, but we're not doubling up on the cost is what I'm hoping.
Actually, we're not exceeding it, we're probably coming below it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Would you like to, at this point in time, I know you have an agenda that you want to review with or speak with the different departments. Do you want to look at the other two studies now, or how would you like to proceed at this point?
Okay, yeah, we'll follow the agenda. Doug, I do have a question about something you mentioned earlier on, that was your week-long visit here. You said you looked at, I think you used the word all the roads and all of the build assets. Maybe you can define that a little bit, talk a little bit about your scope of what you, I'm sure you already looked at some large ticket items, you didn't look at everything.
Yeah, I mean, since we had removed all of these cost items, I wasn't trying to look at items of detail. We're looking at, I toured all facilities. Basically, there was a walkthrough tour. I will say this, I did not tour the police department, that new addition, but we did have the drawings of that, of the work that the administration building to add the police department. So we were able to understand the components from the drawings, and I didn't feel the need to tour that to look at the condition of those, since it's basically a new facility. That's the other, I mentioned the golf club, but that was the other change from the 2018 study, was the addition to the administration. So all of these buildings we looked at, and I walked through, visited all the parks, and essentially everything. I have a photographic record of everything that I looked at, which I can provide to you. And I will say this is, we haven't done this yet, but we will have the ability to link photos to each component in the study. We have a section for that in our worksheets. Just haven't done that yet. That's not quite workable yet, so we're getting there with that.
When you looked at roads, did you classify roads some way?
I looked at the roads, but I had your separate road study. So I looked at the roads and noted I guess the thing that was, so I was relying on the classification from your study. What I noticed was, I think this has been mentioned, the large amount of utility work that has been done in virtually all of these residential streets. Some of them have been patched, and some of them, when I toured the facility, had not been patched. There were some, unpaved small areas. That was a common condition that I saw in all of those. But I would say my assessment of roads was pretty much in line with the consultant report that you had.
Okay. Okay, so with that, the agenda is, first section is golf. We will not have
The golf representatives will not be able to make this meeting. We will have the department heads for every other meeting, but we can still go through this. We'll either follow up with your questions if we can answer it, or we'll give you the answers now with Doug. So golf, what page? How about you? Yeah. So it starts in 2021. Yeah. This year. But we didn't put it in the budget. I thought it started next year. We don't have it. It was supposed to be 2022. Board. I thought the irrigation started in 2022. That's what I told her. So now she's telling me. So that's the issue. That's not in the budget. All right, well, that's got to be adjusted. Plus, I'm not going to do anything with that. So we find out at the other. You got a question?
Yeah, Gene's gonna be.
Yeah. We didn't need it. Yeah.
Just say, the current funding
Okay.
on the capital reserves.
Right.
Okay, what they recommend being the general replacement reserve. You take 10% and put it in the capital. To me, it's contradictory to what you want to do with this stuff in the first place. They're saying this is how much we should have in the general replacement reserve. We're taking money out, taking money away from that recommended amount and putting it into the capital reserve. I'm not saying the capital reserve shouldn't be funded. I'm saying it should be funded a different way than taking what's recommended for the general replacement reserve. And I'll leave it at that.
You know it's next. You want me to answer it, Dick, or Steve? I know the answer. So first of all, Gene, you're right. It's an excellent question. This is something that the board decided last year, right, for the last budget, to do that allocation. That's a board decision. They wanted to fund new capital, and they came up with this method or this mechanics to take it from the replacement. So that's a board decision. It does affect the numbers exactly what you're saying. I totally agree with you. But the board would have to jump in, but the board felt that we would, and again, I'm sure they're going to review it. It will be reviewed again this year. But for last year, they felt that they could do it that way. But I think there's a motion, Doug, if I'm correct, that the board has that. I think it is going to be standard each year. Yeah, so right. So what Doug's saying is yes, but they can review that and change that this time. Yeah, no, you're totally right with the question. It's an excellent question. Yep.
Thank you for giving me the time.
Oh,
and,
anytime.
Thank you for coming.
Say it, Jay. Take care.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you. Gene.
All right, so it's a good question. All right, so we're back. So we're back to golf. What page? 53? 54? 53? 53? I think I don't have the most recent. I got page 4. Yeah, there's two different ways. That's where I was at. So in the back is by right? So if you go to I'll do it whatever way they want to do it. Page 71.
We look at the summary or we look at the detail? John, did you want to look at what's happening in the next 5 years?
That's up to you. That's what I'm saying. Whatever you want.
Rather than the summary has everything. Maybe
Yeah.
we just look at what's proposed.
I think that's fine with me. Okay.
That would be great if it could be PDF.
Yeah, it's a PDF of this. And that'll just help the departments because they have to kind of read through our annual expenditure summaries now. Got their items.
So as I look at golf, I look at 2021, which is this year. That's the first thing out, right? So it looks like there's equipment that's coming due. And the two items that may be deferred would be the bunker renovation and the golf course irrigation clearly will be deferred until that's resolved. So if we look at the next couple of years, golf course irrigation is the big ticket items in these coming years. That's the big one.
So you want me to answer?
So it's either going to go in the short term off the books, potentially on the books again, or it's something that we own and have to deal with right away.
Right. So, and again, an excellent, this is the question on definitely on golf. So obviously with current events and in reviewing the DMA study for golf and for irrigation, we did do a lot of discussion, Justin, John, and myself, and with Stephen Linder. So obviously in 2021 is almost over. We just want to point out that this irrigation system over, I think it's the next 5 or 6 years, was in there originally to be replaced over that time period. In the review, what the golf team did and what we did was we updated what we believed the cost to replace this system over the 5 or 6 years based upon the new information we received with the study and the estimate we received from the outside consultants. So it is in there. You're right, it starts in 2021. Obviously, we do not have plans with what else is going on, and that's still something up in the air. But we right now are maintaining it and not necessarily replacing it until we find out what happens with that whole situation with the effluent. Now, the second part of your question is, you're right. If Ocean Pines decides there is a decision to go with this wastewater treatment, putting in the irrigation system, obviously, to my understanding, this would come off our books. As far as how that would work with that system, I have some ideas on it, but we're not there yet. But I would say, to answer your second part, Dick, correct, this would come out, and then obviously that would be a favorable effect over the next 6 years at the tune of somewhere around $600,000 per year, favorable to help us with the replacement reserve, correct?
Maintenance that you're doing on it now, is that being expensed or capitalized? Expensed. If the irrigation system goes through with the county, they would, as I understand it, they would have it for 15 years. Is that correct? If I remember right from the meeting, John? And let me finish. Maybe I'll put it all in the one thing. At what point do we then, in 15 years, we take it over? At what point do we then capitalize it and put it on the asset list?
Yeah, so again, excellent question. So, Steve and I spoke about it a little bit, and if they own this system for the 15 years, I would think we don't put it on our books. But then at the end of the 15 years, whatever that value is, that somehow would have to be addressed, correct? But the way we're seeing it right now, and again, this is all up in the air or whatever, is that if Ocean Pines went ahead with this, with the wastewater treatment, the 600,000 plus per year over the next years would come off the replacement reserve. And at this point, we don't believe the other system will be on there until the end of the 15 years, and then the whole easement thing will be addressed. But that's the next stage to be discussed. But you're right.
if I remember from the meeting, the life of that system was 50 years. So you would say if we put it on, it would be basically the value at a 35-year point, because 15 years would be depreciated already on that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what the assumption is with the 15. I did hear that, and correct now, some pieces might be earlier than others. Correct.
Okay. Thanks, John.
John, I got a quick question. So figuring that the decision on this affluent being done by the county is going to take some time, I suspect before we get a chance to prepare the budget, and we're maintaining the system, do we have a sense of how much that expense is going to be that we'd have to account for, assuming that we couldn't get this done because the county couldn't move forward with the decision on the affluent?
So, and again, good question. The answer is yes. In the budget that we will be working on, there will be a maintenance piece for the irrigation system. The interesting point on that is that this year it cost us less than others. It all depends on how much we use it for, and if something happens. But the answer is yes, there will be a maintenance number. Yeah, we are calculating that. Doug, we got some panels in those 2 pumping stations. If they go on us, that's a big number. And it's possible that could go. So that's where it is. The day-to-day maintenance with brakes and stuff like that could be, I don't know, 20,000, could be 50. But the big thing is if the pumping stations go, that would be a big number.
Don't know where we're at.
Yeah,
With the county, it would be tough budgeting for maintenance of the system, et cetera.
Yeah. So what we've talked about is trying to use a maintenance, putting in an expense that we saw over the last 2 or 3 years, what it cost us, and that would not be replacing something major if it broke. I'd have to come forward to B&F and then the board if that happened. But yeah, we're not going to, unless something comes up over the next couple of weeks. We don't have something big like that in there. Yeah.
This is a small item, but 3.07.47 on page 69 of 127 on the golf tree removal allowance. This is, maybe it's me and maybe I need to relax a little bit, but that looks like an expense to me and not a capital item. I don't know how that's how that's a capital item. So if you can explain that to me, I'd appreciate it.
So, right. So actually, I thought that's what Gene was talking about before, with us capitalizing stuff that's normally expensed. So I did see this. It is a small number in the whole big scheme of things. I'm glad you pointed that out, but it's an excellent question. I could kind of understand what they probably did in the past with this, but it is a small number, but we're looking at it, take it under advisement. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, no, but you're right. That did a very thorough review. I got to say that. That's good. Let me read it. Now,
So in the next 5 years, we see some bunker renovation stuff happening. Is that? So is there ongoing plans to do that, or?
So I don't have it exactly in front of me. We'll look through it, but that's the whole idea of a DMA study. Is when this comes up, obviously what we did before we even got to the process with B&F was each one of my departments, we sat down and we reviewed and said, hey, maybe this isn't needed right now, and we did push it out. We did have items like that, more focused so on this year, the next one kind of. But that's something we review every year, and if they're in good shape, we would just push them out further. So that's under constant review.
But it's something that will have to be done at some point.
Correct. correct, just like the greens. And it's like anything else, just like the buildings, the more you maintain it, the more you take care of it, you can possibly extend the life.
So help me understand the greens. What happens in the greens when the life?
So, I mean, that's not something unique to us. That's every golf course, and that's like anything else. There's drainage in there. There's grass. We're not anticipating anything like that, but that is something that's not uncommon for golf courses. That there is a useful life to these greens and stuff. I mean, look what just happened the last 7 years, but we brought them back. If that had continued for another 3, 4, 5 years, we probably would have been, a major overhaul. We don't have that, and I don't believe we're anywhere close to it. But it's not uncommon to have a useful life for the greens.
Golf course drainage project. We did ask a question, and its answer here on the sheet. It's going to be reclassified. And looking, there are a number of golf course drainage projects on here. Are they all being reclassified, or how's that working, John?
As well, it's an excellent question on BNF, and it's something that I've looked at for several years. Dave Stevens, when he was here, I had approached him years and years ago asking about it. And now that I've been able to, over the last several years, between Andre and Justin, and seen this course, and I pointed out to a lot of members of the board and whatever, the drainage, the majority of the drainage that we talk about here is really drainage for Ocean Pines. It just happens to go through the golf course. So I truly believe, and Steve and I, we are working up something to come forward to BNF and the board to reclassify properly what really is drainage, and the depreciation that really technically hitting the golf course for it is not correct. But I can walk this course with anybody to show you it's not draining the golf course. It's taking the water from one side of this golf course, and it's amazing how it's all structured, and bringing it to the other side. Now, what we did find the last several years since I've been here was a lot of it had failed and nobody was maintaining it. We've maintained it. We had several projects, my first year, second year, that now you can see 18 and 10 drains beautiful, plus the stuff that Justin's doing. Don't get me wrong on that. So there is drainage. We're working on it. I think Steve, the last time, gave me an estimate somewhere around 70, 80,000, around 80,000, but we're going to fine tune it. We will come to BNF with it. It's about $80,000 of depreciation that really should go over, and that we'd have to move this drainage over also to the drainage account. I think that's why they did. I don't know why they did it back then. Maybe they didn't have a drainage account. I'm not totally sure. But yeah, that's drainage for Ocean Pines. Just happens to go through this golf course. And there's a lot of it. Yeah, it's a great question.
Any golf-related questions? Anyone? Good. I think we're okay with golf. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's a sign off, Linda. What time is it? Maybe if Linda, where are you on your calendar here? Oh, so perfect. They should be here. Are they here? They're right in front of me. You gotta come up here. John Malinowski. John Malinowski came up and sat next to me. In spirit. All right, so.
We want me to stand behind you there. Just pick on our balls.
All right, so what page you want? What Dick? Yeah, it's up to Dick. All right, so obviously, no. So first we're doing general maintenance, public works. Yeah, and then nobody will do bulkheads, roofs. All right, so let's just take care of it.
I got a question for you. The HVA system here for heating is on the propane tank. We buried a 1,000-gallon propane tank here.
That is your heat pumps.
Well, no, the split units.
This is all split. This is all split.
I thought that in the report, it said the split units are for cooling only, and that we have they're for heat too? Well, the point was, we have a 1,000-gallon propane tank buried here. It's not on the report, as is the 4 by the sports core pool. But I'm wondering.
Sports course changed to natural, so it no longer has.
I got that, but the tank's still there. So, and I did the study on that. But the point I'm trying to make is if you contract with Sharp, they'll bring in the tank and put it in for nothing.
Yes, they did.
And we don't therefore we don't own it.
And ones, I think it's sports core, were done by Suburban. They had the same thing at Public Works. They didn't want them back.
Yes, okay.
That's why they
Good.
just abandoned them and left them.
We just answered the question.
Yep.
Yeah, just in the meeting. Yeah. Okay, so I guess back to golf. Tom had a quick question, which is a very good question. I think it's because of the change. I guess originally the other building, Eddie, jump in, these splits that we have here, the HVACs that we inherited and we put into the new building, I guess in the old building when they were put in, when they renovated, they only used them for air conditioning and they must have used something else for heat. They had an old heat system. So that's maybe something that has to be adjusted on here, Linda or Doug, in the sense that Tom pointed out, it says the splits are only for air conditioning, when I can tell you there's no other heating system in here besides the HVACs and the fireplace.
The old building had the boiler.
Right.
The big old boiler system.
You don't
Right.
have a central HVAC in here?
No, sir.
So what were all the returns?
They're not for central air.
No? Okay.
Maybe one day we will put a central system in. Excellent question. Okay, so with that, Dick's back. Dick, whatever way you want. Obviously, the team's here. Public Works with general maintenance first. Yeah, whatever you want. Okay. All right, what page? We're going by year. All right, so we go by year.
First 5 years. Numbers come up. Line item, rate.
So for Public Works, it's the equipment, as Linda mentioned. Now, you know, we have, when we purchase tractors and everything, we seem to be, John Deere seems to come in favorable. The BNF is asking us, Noby, have we looked at New Holland type of tractors and stuff, or other?
We have. We looked all the way across the board at everything.
I've seen them.
Minneapolis, Moline, Oliver, for
George can read, you get a very high price.
So, you know, the only thing again, high level and talking, whatever, and this isn't on there, but with everything with the burn, the control burned, what type of equipment we would need if we were to do this in-house. It is very expensive. I think I sent the board some estimates that the team gave me on if we brought it to the landfill or if we had somebody else cart it away or whatever. There is equipment that we could purchase to do this in-house, but it's very expensive. And I'm going to ask Eddie or Noby to give me an estimate, but it's
They're called tub grinders. I'm sure you guys have seen them where it's construction sites, forestry units. It'll take any kind of wood from pallets to home debris to wood and it grinds them. It's a big mill. But they're $300,000 to $700,000. So no more than it would get used. I mean, and to rent one, we looked into renting one to clean up what we have. They're $30,000 minimum to move it on site. Plus an operator. They're not going to let you operate a $500,000 piece of equipment. They're going to bring their guy in to run it, which I understand.
So obviously that's not on the DMA, but that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that could affect this or whatever, or actually would affect the budget. I don't anticipate coming forward for this next budget with something like that, but that's just to give you an idea. Obviously, this is a piece of equipment that would last a long, long time. And if it costs us 20, 30, 40,000 to cart this stuff away every year, obviously, over time, it might be worth it, but we're not coming forward with that at this time.
Yeah. I got to ask this question. On our questions here, we talked about the fact that we were budgeted this amount, but this stuff had not been replaced yet. Are you?
On our stuff. Actually, the dump trucks have already been purchased, and the snow plows have been purchased. 250s have been purchased. All the stuff that Public Works has been purchased, but with the way things are with COVID, they were ordered back in May. The one vehicle we're due anytime. The others, they say it could be the beginning of next year before it's due.
Okay.
It's
All right.
It's
All right.
same way with the tractor we bought last year, the big John Deere. We bought it last August. We just got delivery on it in September. Took
Right.
a year and a half to get it built.
So if you remember, we came forward with a whole analysis where, I don't know, nobody can jump in, but just round numbers. We either eliminated or traded in like 13 or 15 trucks and other stuff, and we purchased it. We just haven't received it. So it's kind of timing here, Tom. But we actually saved, let me throw this in there, the team saved over $50,000. What is it, a year? So there was a big savings. There was a savings of $50,000 on all these trade-ins and everything. We eliminated 5 trucks or whatever, and there's a yearly savings of like $20,000-$30,000.
Yeah.
High maintenance costs.
Yeah, as the vehicles get older, the maintenance goes up, and also the vehicles that are on this list that haven't come in yet, the vehicle that is replacing will be auctioned too. So it's not like we're going to keep it. So that'll be another list of vehicles that'll be sold for auction.
Right. So it's just timing. It's been approved. It's been purchased. We're just waiting for it, and then it'll come off or be adjusted. I'm sorry.
Going into 2021 for the replacement, we got 508 wood buffer fence, 509 Clubhouse Road bridge repair, and 50910 north entrance bridge repair. I'm thinking those haven't been done. Are they on the list to get done?
Oh yeah, they're on the list. The Clubhouse bridge itself has gone to engineer. Drawings have been done. It went out to bid. We did not have one contractor bid at all. So we resubmitted it. So we're hoping we can get another, because it's a specialty. It's a marine contractor, has to work in the water to do the work. North Great Bridge is being drawn right now. We're sort of waiting because of the things with the state and 589 before we do anything too permanent. But in order to bring us in with standards or what the state is requiring, the engineers are drawing up. Basically, it's the entrance coming to the bridge. It's a barricade, or they don't like the wood anymore. They want the steel. So engineer has it. They're drawing it. I've talked to the company. There's a company out of Baltimore that does it for all the state and the county. So that's probably who we'll end up using. But they just need to see the drawings to give us a bid. But it's all in the works.
Apparently that one guy didn't like the wood either.
No, the wood didn't like that guy. We'll put it that way.
Well, I think 589 is punted many, many years down the road.
It is now.
Roundabout, anything on 589.
Yeah, the meeting I had back when I think it was JB was here with the state, they said there's going to be 1 or 2 projects, Route 90 or 589. And at that time, they didn't know, but right now it looks like they're pushing to dualize 90 before 589.
Our bridge needs to be dealt with.
So we're actually working on maintenance, and you'll probably see at the next board meeting, we'll have a slide on it and what we're doing.
Just a heads up on that too. That material is 20 weeks out of getting it made. So,
Any maintenance, public works questions you have? Yeah.
I have a little question. So the north entrance bridge repair, you're replacing the wood with steel?
It's, as you approach the bridge, there is a wooden, you'll see the board that goes down to the ground. That has to come out, and they want steel at those entrances. Not the whole bridge, just the entrance coming into the bridges on both sides. You're leaving the pines or coming into the pines.
Is it a different design also?
It'll be completely different because it'll be a steel and it'll be the impact. It takes the impact of a car that collapses like you see on Route 113 or anywhere else.
Exactly.
On the guardrails.
So right now it's geared with that angle that the cars hit it and then it flips. So it's a whole different, it'll be a whole different design also.
It's a guardrail. It
Yeah.
comes like this.
Exactly.
We saw the picture in the January budget review. We put $10,000 in there.
Exactly.
But like you say, it's on order.
Would that apply to the bridge over the canal there, just before the golf course? Too? 'Cause that's all.
They're all wood, but that wasn't included in the report. This came from the report from the state when they did the bridge inspections. That's the only place they made a note of that.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions on general maintenance, public works, before we go to roads and bulkheads? Okay. Thank you, B&F. Next up, bulkheads. Or do you want to do roads? Let's do bulkheads. No. Yeah, okay, roads first. Roads first.
Roads are in the back.
So before we get to the roads, I'm gonna, while we're waiting, and I'm gonna ask Eddie or Nobi to just give you an overview of how we approach the roads. How do we know which ones need to be done, and what's the process that we do?
Yeah, we do yearly road inspection. The same guy that's been doing it for years, Clint, goes through them, and he has it's 10 or 12 different items that we look for. We look at alligator cracking, we look at potholes, we look at the weather. And so he's got a whole list where he'll go through and grade each road. He looks at them, grades them, and by that grade is how we determine which road is in the worst case. I mean, DMA is a guide. We go by the years, but it doesn't always mean that way. One of the backside cul-de-sacs that doesn't get the traffic, say another road does, may be due to be replaced, but the condition of it may not once we do take a look at it. The biggest problem we have in here with our roads, which all of you know, is when the county cuts it, the county road cuts. So a lot of times that may push a road way up, even though it was paved 15 years ago. It may have had 100 cuts in its lifetime, which makes it needs to be replaced. I know the question has come up in the past about the base under the roads. They're in good shape. We've had that checked by engineers. Somebody questioned Ocean Parkway a few years ago, but when it was built, it was like a 15-inch base under Ocean Parkway. So there's plenty of base under Ocean Parkway. But like, so we have, what we go by is way more extensive than what the county and the state. We've talked to them before we started grading, and what we do is way more than what they do to look at the roads and to grade them.
Right, and Eddie, what do we have, about 84, 86 miles of road?
Yeah, that's correct.
And we've been trying to do, the last 3 or 4 years, we jump-started that project like many others, and we do about 3 miles a year, 3 or 4.
That's correct.
And then, so 4 or 5 years ago with B&F, when I was on there, we were all different numbers, how much it would cost for a mile, and whoever picked somewhere around 68,000 to 100,000 was correct. It comes at around 100,000, so you can get an idea. But again, so you got 80-something miles of road. They're in good shape from the studies or whatever. $100,000 a mile. If you had some type of reserve, you can just get an idea of what it would cost if even you wanted to put away 20%, which we do not do. Right? That would be what, 1.6?
Gotta ask. casino money
Yes.
must be used for infrastructure. And
Correct.
we do. We use that for the roads.
Correct.
Yes. Now, estimating $350,000 casino money. I think this year you're going to go at 450 easily. Does that mean we can do another mile or two of roads?
We can.
Because when I look at the report here, we've got $179,000 in paving, but next year in 2022 we got 600,000. That's a pretty significant number.
Yeah.
Just saying. I hope the casino comes through.
So, you know, when we come forward with the proposed, proposed at the beginning, the proposed budget, obviously there's going to be 3 to 4 miles of road that we're going to put in there.
There's a number of roads here for that 600,000 in 2022. Is that 3 miles? Is that more? I don't
know the miles.
There's a number of roads there.
Yeah, they have it. We don't have the exact mileage for that. We could check it.
What? No.
Yeah, it's.
What are we looking at for material cost increase? Is that going to affect us next year and maybe reduce the number of roads?
It's a crapshoot.
Right now with petroleum, as everybody knows, asphalt has gone up.
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you. You said a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Hopefully it goes back down. It's held pretty steady over the last couple of years. And contractors have been lucky to be able to lock
Right.
in prices and guarantee us prices.
Right.
But right now,
Right.
I just know things that we bought in the beginning of the spring, they've gone up.
Right.
It's just, you know.
Right. So last year was the wood. Yeah. So last year was the wood went through the roof. Now it's coming down, and now obviously it's the oil, which affects also the vinyl for the bulkheads. So we'll talk about that later when there'll be those bulkheads.
What happens when a utility comes in?
Yeah.
You know, they dig the road up and do a really lousy job patching it up. Is that our problem? Do you go back to the utility?
So I am going to, Eddie, we've discussed this a lot. So first I'm going to ask Eddie, does that happen, Eddie? Or?
All the time.
And what happens?
Yeah, the utility is responsible for patching it. We will go back to them and hold them responsible. What we do as part of our road report, Clint takes photos of every road cut. So we have another folder that we put together and give to the county. These are all the road cuts that you need to repair or patch. And they work with us vice versa. They send us a list of what they know of and where they're working and where they're fixing them. But the utilities are responsible for fixing the road.
It's basically the same.
Correct. Yeah, if the gas company or somebody like that came in, they'd have to. Yeah.
Brian.
Quick question.
Sure.
On the road striping through the parkway.
Yes.
I asked about this
You
before.
did.
Is that something that's on here as an asset, or is that?
Actually, I'm going to.
No.
So that will be in the budget when Eddie went through and Nobi and Linda went through it with me with the public works and the maintenance budget. There is a number in there for the striping for, what is it, Ocean Parkway. So you're going to see that when we do the proposed budget. Every couple of years they have to do it. So it's going to be in there operational.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good question.
The study has significant expenditures coming forward going out to 2030. If you look at the scrolls, some of them are 10, some of them under 10 years when the date in here says that should be replaced. I guess you're saying in some cases, maybe better than maybe reflected here.
Yeah, correct. Like I said, this is not the Bible. We all know that. This is just a starting point and a study guide to go by the DMA study. It's giving us estimates by years. Actually, physically looking at them, you're going to hear about it in the bulkheads when Nobi explains. Just because it's saying it needs to be done, it may not need to be done right then.
Right.
So, I mean, don't get misled by this. If they say we got 800,000 miles of roads that need to be done by year, yes, they may need to be done, but they may be in good enough shape. They don't need to be done yet. They can be pushed back another year or another 5 years.
At the beginning of the study, it says this is a funding plan, not a maintenance.
Exactly.
Right. You know, it's a guide. We do, and Eddie mentioned it, and Nobi will mention it. They do a review at the beginning of each year, or even for the next year, and that's what we use for the proposed budget.
For the upcoming year.
Right. Right.
We look at we look at this. We go by the date. That's part of the equation. But then we look at the actual condition of the road.
Right. So I guess, do we have a concern that
over 7, 8 years from now, we're gonna be riding through potholes and.
I don't think so.
We're getting a huge amount of money.
I don't see it. I mean, because we've talked, me and John have had meetings with the county and the state and roads that we paved, they're like, my goodness, we wouldn't even consider paving them yet. I don't know what you guys are doing. So our roads are really in good condition compared to county and state roads.
Right, and it's also from my experience and what I believe has gone on here even way before I landed here, is that they've made a decision not to have a reserve for roads. I mean, we don't, right? So 84 miles of roads, 100,000, that's what, $8.5 million. We don't keep a reserve, right? We fund it as we go, what we believe we need to do. We, based upon where we see today and what even the roads that we've opened up, we think we're okay. But I can't forecast 5 to 10 years from now, to be honest with you. The only thing I can tell you is we don't have a reserve for it if that happens. So if it does come, if something does happen or we find all of a sudden over the next 5 years that something happens to the roads, just keep in mind, you're right, we may have to do more, but the way our policy here is that we don't pre-fund. So that could be a big number one year. We don't see it right now. But that's policy.
Same kind of thing, because in looking at these numbers, yes, it's a fund as you go, but we can't ignore the fact that at some point, regardless of the fact that the reserve study says this road should be repaid today, we're looking at it going, no, that's right. Not the case, it's got another 10 years worth of useful life before we do that. But at some point, it's more hypothetical, at what point should we consider creating a reserve fund for the roads and kind of not abandon, but kind of rethink the pay as you go? And I think we kind of look at it as a kind of a group effort to say, what should we do 10 years from now?
Right, and that's kind of, and I'm glad, Doug, this is what I'm trying to put out there is, I understand what you're saying about that 6 years ago, but then that would be something that would say start setting up a reserve, which has not been the policy here. But that's the answer to your question, to be honest with you. I just, nobody at this table on this side could forecast what's going to happen in 5, 10 years. The proper way would be to fund, a reserve, maybe at a percentage. That's policy, and right now that policy is not there.
The 3 roads that are here that says should be repaid in 2021.
Which one's where?
Which is 178 grand. If they don't need it, you're just going to push that back.
So we look at, we're trying to do 3 miles, assuming that, depending on the rating system, and I'll ask Eddie to jump in, all the roads are rated. So at the beginning of that year, that proposed budget, we'll look at it and say, hey, we definitely think these should be done. It's borderline. It's borderline, but again, do you want to back it up? I mean, the ones we've done needed it.
Yeah, our rating, we have 4 different ratings by the time they're totaled up at the end. They start off as an excellent, a good, a fair, and poor. Where we start off on our list on how many we can do, we start with the poor list. And usually every year, we knock on wood, we've been lucky. We've been able to do all the poor and part of the fair roads we've been able to get in and still stay within the 3 miles and stay within the amount that was budgeted. But like Dick said, it could happen. I mean, like 10 years down the road, who knows, 5 years down the road, a hurricane hit, wipe all the roads out. I mean, you don't know.
If your approach is to stay within the 3 years, 3 miles.
Not necessarily.
Eventually.
Yeah.
These roads are going to be more demand.
Yeah. Now, we don't do just 3 years. Last year, it's been 3 years. We have done as much as I think we've done 6 and 7 miles of roads in here before. So it all depends on what the funding is for it. Because there is no reserve, we have to wait and see what's going to be funded. We can request it, but I'm going to have the backup to say, yes, we definitely need it, or no, it can wait. We can cut it back on the mileage.
So, do you have any input or thoughts about maybe having reserve? What do you think?
For me, I think I'm ready to listen to what BNF is recommending.
I think that's a topic that probably warrants some further discussion at the BNF level to see really what makes sense with regard to actually establishing a reserve fund. Obviously, our constituents are going to ask them, what does it affect from an assessment perspective? How does that affect them?
Yeah, so I guess if what's in here is not necessarily
It's a guide.
your seat,
A guide.
so I guess,
So
if you had to look at what you knew about the roads and your forests and so forth, and go predicting the usage over the next 10 years. So, I guess I'd like to hear from you where you think that landslide is going to hit.
Good question.
You want me to answer?
Something that
When you're
looks like it's
retired,
gonna be-
right?
Yeah.
You want me to answer?
Yeah, exactly.
So, so,
Yeah, no,
so,
add to the discussion of the reserve.
Look, what we're doing, which we should be able to give you rough, close ideas on that because we do a study every year. So we have an annual study that we can follow and we look at every road and every road is graded. So if we see all of a sudden 6 roads that were good last year, 10 roads, all of a sudden they moved to fair this year. So I know they're gonna probably be poor in the next couple of years. We'll be able to tell going ahead. All right, we're gonna get hit this year with a lot more roads that are starting to drop off in this one section or this one area. But by the history that we have built on doing them every year, we should be able to at least predict a little bit. We can't exactly, but we will have some idea if something starts to fail. It'll be documented.
Pretty soon your casino is 450. You're multiple times exceeding that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think it's.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Dick. It's like anything else. You look at the roof, the shingles on your house, the 20-year shingles. You look up there on the 18th, 19th year, depending on the weather, depending on a lot of different things, you may get an extra couple of years, or you run the risk then of something happening even bigger if you push it out. So we do grade it. We do review it every year. That's the best we can say right now. And do we see anything big this year when we come with the proposed budget? We don't. So far, we don't. Outside of the 3, 4, 5 miles.
All right, so further dialogue on those. Okay.
Okay, so a little background on bulkheads. It's the same thing. They do a study. In fact, Eddie, Noby, and I guess Justin or whatever just did a review. I'm going to ask Noby to jump in and explain, or Eddie to explain what they did, where they come up with a plan for 4 or 5 years. And I'm going to let them do it. They're the experts. Who's taking this?
Nobody don't want, unless nobody wants to talk, you're more than welcome. The way we handle the bulkheads is pretty much the same way we do the roads, and I'll let Noby explain on some of it to you. We take what DMA has, which is the years. It's again, you're going by years when a bulkhead should be replaced. Well, there's a lot of different variables that go into if a bulkhead needs to be replaced other than just the year. As Doug knows, some of the board members, you guys will know, we had some bulkheads we had worm damage in. That's something you can't predict with the worm damage. So we're replacing bulkheads that are only 20 years old, 25 years old, because of things that are out of our control. So what we did and how we started is we took what DMA said over the next 5 years that's due to be replaced. And we went physically out and looked at every one of these bulkheads. And we came up with our plan. Some of them, yes, they are going to be due. And some of them, no, they can wait. We looked at different things as the condition of the bulkheads and the way the bulkheads were set up. DMA will have a property, if you notice as you get through it, it may show a property here, and then it'll skip 2 houses, and it'll have another property. For some reason, they didn't get replaced all the same year in a run. Well, doing bulkheads, it's so much easier, and the bulkhead will last longer if you do straight runs. So we go to the end of a canal and work our way back. So that was into our determining factor too of what needs to be replaced over the next few years. We looked at the straight runs, we looked at the condition of the bulkheads and the age of the bulkheads. So that's how we came up with our plan. And if we took, it's going to be the same thing that Dick said with the roads. If you take some of the footages, I think 2025, I think that was a big year. We were looking at, wasn't it like 5,000 feet they're saying need to be replaced? So that would really throw the budget way out of whack. So when we built it, we tried to keep it within $1 million, $1.2 million, like we've been doing over the years. And we went by what materials costing now and that kind of stuff is how we came up with it.
So first of all, that's all excellent. Let me just jump in here. So just like what we talked about with the roads, there's 84, 86 miles of roads. the linear feet, we work in linear feet each year when we prepare the budget and these studies and plans. Eddie or Nobi, help me out. What is it, like 90,000 linear feet? So there's 90,000 linear feet out there. We've been trying to do 3,000, right? The 3,000 linear feet a year, and that's what we've been doing the last several years, a little bit plus. So again, keeping in, 30 years or whatever with this. So there is a method to what we're doing. Prices have gone up a lot the last couple of years. We're hoping the wood comes down, but then we got the vinyl with the oil, as Eddie mentioned earlier. That's a big component of the vinyl. So we're looking at that. We may do less linear feet, come forward recommending with that this year because of the supply chain and COVID and everything. The contractors have had a rough time trying to get the work done within the time frames and to get it all done by May. So we may come forward with a less than 3,000 feet. But it's just like Eddie said, we review it, we see what we can do, or what's needed, or what's an emergency.
And then we also have some bulkheads that we look at that we use the work order system. So that way, if like a constant work order comes in for a property, we kind of start tracing that. So that way we kind of know there's problems with it. And the good thing with the vinyl is later on down the road, we actually can maybe just replace hardware versus if it was all wooden. So that's just some of the things of the vinyl that, it's going to help us out in the long run.
Eddie, is notion of emergency repairs, is that kind of an anomaly, or is that something that is critically factored into because it happens so often throughout your budget year? You have to average, in other words, you average X amount of dollars of spend to deal with emergencies. Is that something you guys work
Yeah, I'll give you an example of the emergency we just did over on Golden Eye. We had tie rods fail, which is what holds the bulkhead back. Well, they rusted through. And he had like 3 of them go at once with the storm. So all of a sudden his wall pushed out and started to lean. So we're starting to lose his wall. We were able to come in temporary and drive another pole in to hold the wall up, but it wasn't fixed. So that became an emergency. It's got to be fixed or he's going to lose his wall. If he loses his wall, then you're talking more expensive. The property owner losing his property, could be damage to the house, damage to the bulkhead on either side of it. So emergencies do pop up. They're unforeseen. You don't know what's going to cause it. We get a nor'easter blowing there 3 or 4 days. It can pop tie rods that are 15, 20 years old that we can't see. They're underground, but the stress of a storm can show it.
Yeah, the idea is that some portion of that 3 miles is going to be affected by the number of emergencies that pop up.
Yep, correct.
Could we talk about the 355 cost estimate? I know I read somewhere, John, you've done an explanation of how you arrived at that. And I was wondering, with the inflation that we've been talking about and the availability of
Right. So,
supplies, does that really need to get adjusted up?
so Nobi has done extensive work on this, and a lot of this is negotiation. Also, Brian, in the situation where we did come forward early last year to the board asking for approval, and I want Nobi to talk to you about this. We locked in a price with a contractor early, which helped us before we knew prices were going to go up. A lot of stuff was stored in public works or whatever, but we were able to get that price because we locked in it early. We're probably going to come forward again this year. We're already negotiating, and Nobi will jump in on that. The other part is we were able to get that staging area from that commercial property that did save us some money, which definitely helped to the 355. But I'm going to let Nobi talk to you about it. So everywhere else we're seeing well over 400 a linear foot. Nobody's going to tell you what we've done with a preferred supplier.
Yeah, so the price is steadily going up, as we all know. Hopefully we'll be able to lock in our last year phase with a close to the 355 price, based on how fast we can move to lock in the contractor, where they can show good faith to the supplier, where we can all make it work to go forward with the last year.
So there might be a little effect on the cash flow, but we're saving money. But that 355, a lot of work, a lot of negotiation. Credit to this these gentlemen or whatever, and we've met with this preferred supplier or contractor. So, but there's a lot of prices out there way higher than the 355, Brian.
Well, I guess my concern was the estimate for the years going out, for the 5 years anyway.
Right.
They're all priced at 355. And it's likely that's not.
Well, there's a 3.08 increase in that.
Oh, Tom, man.
$13 per year.
Yeah, so and that's one part, and that's how the whole mechanics of that. Look, we don't know, we're hoping lumber, and it is coming down, right? The wood from last year at this time, but then now, of course, we have the oil. So again, it's not a perfect science, but it's a guideline.
One thing I like about this contract, because I had contracts, so when I was working for a living, is that some contracts, there was an exclusion to the cost when fuel prices went up. In other words, thank you.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. All right. He's not listening, is he? All right. No, you're right. You're right.
All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah. No, good questions.
So if I look at the bulkheads here, expenditure between 2021. What page are you on?
Page 13 of 168, is it? I can't see, it's got a hole in it. 12 of 168. So if I look at the average of the projected expenditures on page 12 of 168 for bulkheads, and I look from 21 to 30, and the average altogether, it's 1.9 million a year. And built into that is 3.08% inflation. So in the year 2030, it's 30% higher than it is right now. To me, that doesn't seem that there's a whole lot of risk in there. As kind of paying as you go. Right now, you're paying at a lower level than what you have to pay at going forward, but it's not a huge potential exposure. Granted, the average is double where you're at right now, or a little less than double, but it's not particularly huge. And paying as you go here, along with the idea of, I guess you can only do so much a year, right? You only have so many contractors that can only do so much. So you can't probably do a lot more. So I guess it seems to feel comfortable here when you compare the DMA study with the pay as you go, what we're doing right now. It seems like a balanced effect. I don't have that same feeling with roads. I think we've got bigger exposure in roads than we do here as pay as you
Okay.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand your point. I had the same feeling years ago when I was sitting where you are. On the bulkheads, though, there was something I wanted to say. Wait, let me get it. So you're right. We do it. We pay as we go each year. You don't know if something happens, whatever, and then you're going to have a big increase to the assessment for that year. If you have a situation that we can't anticipate right now, there's just nothing to pull on if we did have some type of emergency or something out of the ordinary happened. So, and I understand your point with roads.
Almost the bulkhead owners.
Well, let's talk about that.
Have a mindset that this thing could jump around. Unless they want to.
Right, and right. Correct. We saw that last year when we had to raise it like 150 because the prior years we weren't even charging enough to do the bulkheads. So that's a point because you're going to have it just the way you said it. Yeah.
In here, when we replace new bulkheads, we have the extended useful life, right? The vinyl life is a much bigger number, and that's built in. Yes.
Okay, questions?
Okay, Linda, that's the sign off from BNF on Public Works. Any other questions while we have the team here? And there's probably 40 years of experience behind me on roads, bulkheads, and Public Works, if not more. They do. All right, guys, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Recreation and Parks and Marina. Do we have the representative from Rec and Parks? Yes, we do. Debbie Donahue.
Oh, there she is.
Debbie.
I was told I could sit back there. I didn't have to sit over here. Quick and painless.
I don't know about painless. Okay, so what page do you want us on? Or Debbie's going to be doing also the Marina? Yeah. Okay, so Rec and Parks, we'll do that first, and then the Marina. And I guess the Rec and Parks includes the racket sports.
So again, if we look at the next 5 years going out, what numbers are you looking at? What line number?
30. They're getting there. The line items, again, kind of jumps around a little. But it would be Bainbridge Park 40201 would be the first one for 2022. You have to remember the fours, and then you go down to fours, and the are all fours.
Yeah, Dr. So, for that, 12 paddleball court construction, is that a new paddleball court?
No, we're not looking to add anything to the platform paddleball section. There's just some repairs that need to be done over there. There's cracks and stuff that need to be fixed, but nothing new. Right. We don't have anything scheduled for new.
Correct. The only thing, Doug, is the pickleball courts where we're this close to getting the permit, which everybody knows about and has already been approved. There's nothing else that we're looking to, right, outside of maintenance and stuff.
So that must have been the full replacement. It was in here.
Where was it?
I don't know what number they said.
Page 27.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Page-
Yeah, that would have been a full new.
That's not the pickleball court. That's paddle structure.
This is page 27 of 126.
Hold on. So, all right, so,
Yep.
so this is to put in a new paddleball court in this year?
That's what I was wondering if it was meant to be pickleball.
I thought it was pickleball.
Probably.
Yeah,
Because it shouldn't be paddle, it shouldn't be platform.
It should say pickleball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good catch. And then obviously that's probably going to move over to 2022. So Debbie's just pointing out 411.16.
Oops, sorry.
That's already been completed in 2021. So that, I guess the new number goes in there for a different year. Right. So just Linda will address that.
Next question would be, so if that's the case, the place that we have pulled out of the stone, and it's going to be a gravel parking lot, that over by where the farmer's market sets up that side?
We've added some stuff to that, but I think it pertains to between the police department and the recreation center.
Right.
That's still a gravel parking lot in the back.
Right.
And it won't be redone. There's no changes that we can make to that, but there may be some gravel that needs to, yeah.
Yeah, we actually reviewed that this year, Doug. We were looking at it, but I'm being told I don't need to do it.
For the tenant shack, the windows are listed, casement windows for the shack isn't. It's the old south guard tower that was moved over there.
Right.
So it's not on the asset list. So what happens if tenants wants to replace that? How does that work?
So, and you're right. We've had other situations with this where it's not in there. It's not on there, but when the time comes to replace that, it'll be no capital. Well, if the asset's retired, that still wouldn't warrant new capital. Steve and I believe that it would be replacement. Because we do have a building there, it just happens to have zero value. So it would take place just like any other asset that we're replacing, where we would have to put in the proposed budget. The B&F would review it even before that, and then we'd bring it to the board for approval, and it would be a capital in nature. And then you would see a number in here going forward over the next 30 years, if it costs $50,000. But that's how that would work. It just happens to be a zero value right now.
Yeah, I've got a comment on that. The history, the 2-hour history that's on YouTube about Ocean Pines, they talked about that being the guardhouse at the south gate, but when it was moved, it was expanded. It wasn't that big, which is the current size of it now. Interesting.
Yeah,
we're going back over 50 years.
Right. At this point, it would have been fully. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, but
so in 2023, we have a tennis court renovation.
2023. All right, I know what that is.
It looks like something that food service looking in detail.
Right, just give me the page. Yeah. Is that just for one, or that's all of them? So those are the hard true courts or whatever, and after X amount of years, there is a major renovation or a replacement of that. It's 2023. At this point, we're maintaining them better than they've been in the past.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. We believe that, when we review this again in 2 years, we can possibly even extend that.
Is that the original value of the built? Or the future value?
I don't know if anybody ever changed it.
I guess what I'm saying is, when Doug was talking about certain assets, you look at assets and you say certain things don't have to be replaced, certain things do, build that into the study. Seems like a tennis court, you get fences and things that probably last a long time, right? Sidewalks.
It's not. It's the.
That's not the fences.
Yeah.
The fence. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, it's okay. It's the actual court itself. That after so long period of time, and I'm going to say 20, but don't quote me on that. We've had it for quite some time without it having to all be taken up and replaced. We do a maintenance every single year. However, this dollar amount estimated would be to do all of them and take it all up and replace them all.
Right. So as you know, we dedicated more resource for maintenance down there. Bob actually was down there yesterday walking the courts with Tim. And Tim said with all the maintenance and everything we're doing now with Bob there and more access to Bob, that he believes that it could extend the courts. It's like anything else, you maintain it, and sometimes it lasts longer.
10.
I guess, not 2024, I'm not seeing a whole lot of stuff in the area of four community center parking lot, is that the gravel lot?
Which number?
41202?
That would already be the project that we completed.
Or just did?
Yep, I'm assuming that's the project that we've completed already in this past summer, when we did the parking lot and the paving and the relining, and striping and stuff of the parking lot. We already did that in the spring.
This would be an expenditure in 2024, not 5 years or so. Something
Yeah, so, and again, it could be, we can look at that. I'm going to ask Linda to put it down. We may be able to extend that now with what we just did. Good point. 41202. Right, so,
The asphalt one, the community hall is the gravel. Is that how they're-
well, no, the gravel. On the side there. Oh, she's talking on the side of the east room. We didn't do that.
Oh, yeah.
So Linda, and this is excellent point. Linda just checked Doug and Dick. Linda just checked the dates on this. She thinks this is the parking lot, and I believe she's correct, to the east, on the east side over there where the east room is, which we did not just.
We did not do the under of the overhang, and we did not do the Marlin room side, the Foltz room side.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got the admin, then you got the front of the community center. Now you got that east side, which we didn't do, which is this, and then the gravel where when you pass the police department on that side, which we reviewed this year and we opted not to do it. So I do have the chief here. If there's any more questions on Rec and Parks. I mean, these were excellent questions, I got to tell you. Okay. All righty. Yeah, there's nothing we can think of right now either that's coming up. Anything? Debbie wants to do the Marina.
No, Debbie doesn't.
Let's do the Marina.
Debbie didn't ask.
Want to do the Marina? So obviously with the Marina, the T-docks, and nobody just, nobody left, but the T-docks is the biggest thing there. The gas tanks, all that stuff we've addressed, maintained over the last several years. So there's nothing that's coming across my desk right now over there.
Was the T-dock bumpers put in?
I think I know what he's talking about. You're talking about,
So in other words, where the fuel docks are.
right, you're talking about,
The padding around the
right,
sides.
we had that.
They had that.
Yeah, that was, right, that was in the last year we did that, or the beginning of the year. Yep. No, good question. Not a window.
So I'm looking at it right now. I guess
7.
Yep, you're right, the sevens. What page, 40?
We have a few on 40, page 40, 127, Marina Walkway,
Skip over that.
renovations.
Just do the Marina.
47, you said?
Page 47, that's for 2020.
I guess in the marinas, pier C or pier B.
Well, what page? I don't have.
I'm just looking at page 118 and 127. percent are replaced these? Are they replaced with the same material?
So, obviously Ron's not here. I mean, it would be whatever the government regulations are for it. I don't know exactly what they are. I can tell you that, right, you're going out to 2033. I mean, I can't tell you it would be the exact material because there could be changes in the regulations.
Marina has a tiki park.
No, it's always under yacht club, yes. 700. We extended the gas tier.
Yeah, it looks like the gas pumps appeared. Right, that's out. Right.
He did maintenance on that. He did work last year. So, yeah, we're going out 10, 12, 15 years. The tanks. We did maintenance on them last year. Is it every year? I know we just did it. Again, we review, and if it's needed, we do it.
Yes, on page 40 of 127 in year 2025, line numbers 701, 17, and 18, new Marina walkway renovations for 50K and 69K.
Right. So
What are those?
So I'm thinking those are when you leave the yacht club piece. There's a lot of boardwalk there, or whatever you want to call it. I believe that's what it is.
So it's board. It's, okay.
Yeah. When you go down there, you see all the boards before you get to the.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on Marina before we? Great, because I have the chief here. All right, thank you very much. So that's a sign off on Marina as of now. Debbie, thank you very much. Debbie, thank you. Chief. Okay, so next on Linda's agenda is the police. And I know there's a few things I know that are going to come up on this. What page, Linda? Page 20? 30. Yeah.
Of the executive summary?
Sorry, page 30 of 127. At the top, police department.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right, but I mean, you're going to need replacement.
Actually, that's not.
Okay, so Dick, on page, what page is this? Page 30 of 127. So 1.05.05, right, for 2022. Public safety, computer network, police, that's a big number. The chief and I have spoken about it. I'm going to ask the chief to jump in and explain to you what it is. And this is something that possibly, Linda, can come off.
The reason that that's put on ours is in case we were independent, if we had a different network system, which we did at one time. But the way we operate now, we are tied in joint with Worcester County 911 Center as far as computer CAD. So if you dial 911 right now, you don't get the Ocean Pines Police Department. You get Worcester County Central. They ask you if you want fire, police, where are you at? You're in Ocean Pines. It automatically drops it to our CAD. So our program is actually the software, the networking program itself, the actual CAD, is housed at Snow Hill, which is run by emergency services. So they dispatch fire, police, and ambulance. And if it's Ocean Pines, then they drop it to us. Any upgrades to that system or anything, all goes through the county. Before we had our own CAD system that was not connected to county, where this would be our expenditure for us to upgrade our own network. But with this in right now, the way it stands right now, which is going to be the future, they're actually talking now for over the next 3 years, there will not be any servers. Everything's going to be cloud-based. So our intentions are to remain county connected, county-wide. So that would take that line, that public safety networking is all going to be, we would probably still have a user fee and licensing fee, but we won't have that expenditure of doing our own installment of that software. So right now that's looking like that's going to remain at the county level forever and ever.
Not a physical asset on one service we put in about 3 years ago.
Correct. Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so Linda's writing that down. That'll be an adjustment that she'll make.
On your radio equipment.
Right.
2022.
It's the next one down.
65
Right here.
grand. Does that at all, will that all tie into the, your need for body cams and things like that?
No, actually, the radios in themselves, the radios that each officer carries on their side and the ones that are in the cars, that entire system is borderline of being obsolete. We've already been told that they're old enough right now that they will not be repaired. So we will have to replace as they go out. We carry the same radios that the sheriff's department carries and everything else, and they're in the same boat. So those are going to have to be replaced as they fail over time. But we bought them all at the same time, so they're probably all going to have to be replaced or fail at near the same time. Yeah, so we're still going to need that number in there because basically right now each car radio is about $5,000. Each personal radio that I have sitting there in that chair, that's about a $3,000 radio. So
that'll be in the budget plans this year?
yes, but that does not include the body cams and the police reform mandates that we started discussing last year have already started. Actually, I have a lieutenant that's in Snow Hill right now with Ocean City with different manufacturers to see what kind of body cams are going to be available for us and to see if this is also going to be a county project like the radios are, or if this is going to be each individual. The state's attorney's office does not want body cams that we buy from one manufacturer. Snow Hill PD buys from another manufacturer because they have to be able to download and store all this video. The body cam thing is a totally different animal, completely by itself. That legislation is telling us that we're going to have to mandate, it's already written, it's already been passed through legislation, that our department will be mandated 24-25. We can't wait till 24-25 to find out which program, which cameras we're going to use. What they don't give us is what the restrictions and the mandates are. If I have an officer that's involved in something, what do I do with his camera? Does it go in an evidence room for 6 months and then I've got to have another camera to replace him? Do I have to have a camera per officer, or do I just have to have enough for what's on the road? None of these answers have been given to us yet at all, but they're all out there. The other thing with the cameras is being we put money in reserve last year, not knowing when the deadline was going to be. The larger agencies, Baltimore and things like that, they're already going to be mandated. They're being mandated right now. So we have some leeway for at least that 23, 24, but we can't wait till 24, 25 to purchase something, because then it's going to be a whole nother ball game as far as storage and who's going to maintain and things like that. So the cameras are going to be a major expense. We just don't know what date we're going to get them, what date they're going to be available. So there's a lot of other agencies and things that are involved. That's going to be that, but that's going to be our biggest capital thing coming.
And that's not included. And that's not included in the DMA.
No.
Right. Do you have a sense of how much we should be putting away in anticipation of making this?
Yeah. So actually the other day, the the chief, and I think Steve was in there also, we just talked about this, and I'm going to let the chief jump in, but we do have some idea. And as the chief mentioned, we're not even sure how this will come about, whether the county will do this whole thing, but he has some numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, we're guessing around a $60,000 just for the camera issues themselves.
How much is it per patrolman?
Right now, you're probably talking around $8,000 per officer, because each camera has to be programmed for that officer, and then you have to have the software and everything on how to download it. And then if it's even going to be used, somebody's going to have to review all that. So that expenditure, we're not going to know until we say we're going to buy that camera instead of this camera. So that would be a really wild guess for me to put out there. But the ballpark we're looking at is about $8,000 per officer.
My intent is just to make sure we identify we're going to have this expense and we're putting away.
Absolutely. And again, the finance through legislation, the state's telling us you're going to have it, but we don't know if they're going to give us some money for it, towards it, completely pay for it, operate. So we don't know the operating expense of it. We don't know the purchase cost of it, but we know it's coming because legislation has already passed it.
I have a question. So it's $8,000 per officer.
Right.
So you have 13 officers, so that's more than 60,000.
Well,
is that because you don't know if each officer needs their own?
Right. We don't know if each officer has to have their own, or if I never have more than 5 officers on the road, so maybe all I need is 6 or 7 cameras, and you come in on duty and you have it, and then it goes to the charger, and then when the officer comes on duty. So we don't know that. Like right now, same with the cars. I don't have cars for each officer. You use it on your shift, and then she's going to use it on her shift, and so forth.
But it could potentially be a lot more than 60,000.
It absolutely
Yes.
could, depending on what the mandate is going to be per officer. And the software and things that are going to go with that could expand even more, because on a scene, if I have a situation out here, I could have 1 officer that's on that scene, or I could have multiple officers. So 2 officers are there, and I've got 2 body cams that are going to go out of service for that incident. And if I have a deputy that comes in to help them, now I have 3. So this whole body cam thing, everybody jumped on the bandwagon and said we want all police to have body cam, but none of this research was done ahead of time. And so we're really lost. Yes, absolutely.
At least a year out from.
Yeah. So this number could be anywhere from 60 to 150 or whatever. We don't want to put that out there, right? So you agree?
You're right.
So we are looking at it. We're reviewing it. We have discussions on it as soon as it is. It's obviously something that you probably have the chief with me, and we'll present to BNF. But right now, we don't know. We just know a number is coming.
A couple questions on page 47 of 127 under the schedule of components. There's computers and electronic package 1.05.08, which looks like it's due for replacement this year. Then a couple down, there's computers and electronics, police department 1.05.11. So looks like it's out to 2023 for a replacement. Are those the same things or different things?
No,
What is that?
The ones our in-house. One is our in-house networking system, as far as our RMS, our records reporting system, and the other one is CAD dispatch, which is electronic dispatch, which is 2 separate.
None of those are the computers in the cars, right?
The mobile computers in the car are considered part of the CAD.
Okay,
dispatch.
thank you.
We're at 11:45. We'll stay if there's any more on the police, but we have admin and aquatics to still go.
Yeah, just one more, Chief. On that same page, we were talking about the radios for $63K, and then below that's another line item for radios for $30K, due in 2024. Are those entries correct?
They are, but they're separate because the console, which is actually what the dispatchers use, that's one system that is not included with the car systems and the portable systems. That's a console within itself, which has your 911 locator maps and where your phone calls come in through that. That's totally separate. Mhm.
Okay. Good. Good. Pretty cool sounding equipment.
Okay, Chief, thank you very much. All right, so sign off on the police. So I hear somebody
Live
wanting.
scan and mug shot.
Food's coming. Not yet. You want to do admin before we go?
Can't they use that for wedding parties?
Okay. Yeah. Let's do the end. Yeah. So Dick, the food's going to be coming out in a few minutes, but we have admin and aquatics. Kathleen can't make it. We can do it if we'd like to.
Yep.
You pick aquatics or admin. I know Steve's ready to go here.
Whoever wants to jump in?
All right, Steve, all you. Well, Dick, why don't do the way we've been doing it. Tell us what page. Tell us what your questions are.
All right. So
From an admin standpoint.
In the admin area, the numbers are
1.
1 is the loneliest number.
We don't have really anything high end until around 2024.
Yeah, I mean, just to sum it up, Dick, if you want me to, the main things in admin are really the building itself, you know, outside of the police area that obviously just got done. A lot of that stuff is coming due. I think the finance furniture, for example, is very old. And then there's a lot of computer equipment. We've budgeted a lot of the IT centralized costs in there. So based on the quick turnaround of the useful life of IT equipment, you know, I thought it was prudent to keep it in there with the hardware refreshes. You know, so it's probably not a 1-for-1 looking at each of these line items. There was a lot of spend about 4 years ago. A lot of surveillance stuff in there. So a lot of the camera equipment and things like that needs to be replaced.
Yeah, there's not much in the current few years. How much life do we got of the computer? The typical personal computer, laptop?
I mean, we just got new some laptops, I guess, with COVID in order to be able to outfit more employees. You know, the previous ones, which were bought about 4 years ago, you know, are definitely becoming more obsolete. Yeah. So about 5 years is the average.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, on page 35, at the top of 10409, software finance for 35 grand. Is that related to North Star or is that something else?
I'm going to guess it's something else. 35. Yeah, so Doug's correct. That's not North Star. That is backup stuff.
All right. Well, I've gone out to 2028. Nothing's coming out of me as being A question? Oh. No, no.
Dick, good. Yeah, so Dick, BNF, thank you. I'll take that as a sign off for finance. I don't see the food. We have aquatics. Oh, it's right in front of me. Okay, do you want a break for the do or finish aquatics first?
Let's finish your part.
Yeah, good. No, I'm with you if you want to do that. Okay, so aquatics, Kathleen could not make it, but we have a team here that I believe we can answer the questions. What page?
Six.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah. So the swimming, I know we've had discussions about the swimming racket roof. So we're going to come forward with that. Yeah, so this one, we're probably going to, when we do the proposed budget, you'll see that. And Linda's actually putting together that schedule for us or for me. You'll see that on there, the replacement of the roof. Approximately $35,000. Be honest with you, that's the biggest thing that I remember coming up outside of some of the others.
There's a really long, useful life for a swimming pool. Yeah, wow. 2059. It's great.
I have a question. Line 60611, a new kitchen. Is that the swimming racket kitchen? It's only $11,000, but I don't know what that is.
607, I don't even see it.
So page 115 and 127.
Oh, 115. I actually think I know what this is. Yeah, this actually came up. Yeah, exactly. Let me just get there. We actually talked about this. So Amy, we did have a little discussion. There's some type of snack bar, as Steve called it, or something in there, right? So we actually had some discussions. I don't remember us doing anything, but yeah, right. So I think when I was in there 4 years ago, they were doing pizzas and some other stuff in there, and they were making some money. And then that seems to have gone the other way. So there's nothing we have planned right now. What's the years for this? Yeah. So right now, we're leaving it there. It could possibly be we're sitting here in 2023 or 2024, and we're saying that we don't need to do it. But right now, we're not anticipating anything. Based upon what you've seen, you're right, that it's not being utilized. We thought 4 years ago maybe that would take off the other way. As of now, nothing.
On page 31 of 127, 60312 SNR roof, we're going to replace the roof on the swimming racket.
Yes.
Building next year.
Yes, the 35,000. That's actually when we come forward with the proposed budget. You'll see that on the capital list. Yes. Yep. No, we've had discussions on that.
Another question. The beach club pool enclosure on page 114 of 127. Item 60518 for $73,000. What is that? That's right here.
That's a good question. So it's the picture. Who's here? Yeah. We getting drinks later, or we getting home?
What's that?
Yeah, what is that?
That's a good question. Page
114 and
127.
The removable roof.
60518. I know. It was done in 2016.
I don't know what it is.
I've been there too.
I know it is. So what I believe this is, this is the wall around there. The wall around this came up, right. Yeah, the first time I read it, I was like, what are we, it's the wall that they finished. Yeah. Yep. No, good question. That's to replace it. I mean, with all the stonework and everything there, I don't remember what it was in 16, but that's what it is. Yeah, no, good question. Yeah, the first time I saw it, I asked the same thing. Yeah, and there's a lot of brickwork. There's a lot of defense, everything, right? It's all a good question.
Anything else?
There's not a lot to do on aquatics.
Okay. I'm still impressed with the useful life of the pool. That's great. All right, I think we're
good
with that, John.
Okay, lunch is here. I guess we go up and get it, or I don't know, is Judy coming back? Okay, so welcome back. We're up to the presentation of the spreadsheet, the infamous spreadsheet, which is basically tying everything together that what we did today, looking at what needs to be replaced each year. We talked about transfer rates, we talked about inflation rates, we talked about investment percentages. So Steve has a schedule that we prepare every year, which I think is one of the best schedules that we have, that ties everything together, so where we can see as an association these binders and these pages, voluminous pages, what does this mean at a point in time as we do the budget. And that's why I say this is one of the most important tools that we use for finance and for budgeting. So just to go back to whatever it was, 4 years ago when we did do the original DMA study, I believe the B&F team, and I guess the board agreed, but the B&F team recommended that we be funded for the operational replacement, the general replacement reserve, somewhere in the 22 to 28% range. Is that correct, Steve? Yep, Steve's nodding. So that's what Steve does here, and he's going to go through it line by line with you so that you can see where we're at today. Obviously, we saw that, this is a guide, the DMA study, and then that 22 to 28% obviously is where we, as a homeowners association, basically everybody agreed that we should be in. I know that Doug, that was probably one of the biggest questions he was asked last time. So, at the end of this, after Steve and I are done with this, and Linda, we'll probably ask Doug and, any questions that B&F has to give us his take on it. Okay, so with that, Steve, I believe, has handed out, or Linda has handed out the general replacement reserve. I believe we took it out, Steve, 5, 6 years, counting the current year. So the current year plus the next 5, 6 in total. And, I'm sure you all went down to the bottom to see where we're at, but we're pretty close. But I'm going to ask Steve to go through line by line with you and to just talk it out. Now, you have touched on this today, on all the pieces, but let's have Steve tie it all together for you. All right? With that, Steve?
Okay, so nothing really we haven't probably seen in a lot of the numbers that we looked at this morning. So, we have the contribution funding amount, which is 1647. That's what we contributed this year in the budget. And then the contribution factors are based, or the contributions for all the out years are based on the DMA study that you have right here. So that's based on the 3.8% transfer increase that we all agreed on. So you can see where we're potentially contributing takes us up to about $2 million in 26-27. So that's, an increase of, about $350,000 over that 6-year period. I also have new capital on the right side there just to kind of show you how they tie in together, because per Gene's point, the motion is written where we have a 10%, up to 10%, I believe is the way it's written, that gets contributed in that new capital reserve as well. The interest, I think we're using the 0.5% that we talked about. The spending does differentiate a little bit, I think, from what you saw in the DMA binder, because we had a budget that was higher. The latest estimated spending number that is part of the treasurer's report each month has us more in the lines of $600,000 for this year, and that's just the general replacement spend. And then the spending is what we just went through in terms of projected expenditures for all those out years. And then from a bottom line standpoint, that shows us what our ending projected balances are. And you can see that you're in the neighborhood of $4.7 to $4.6 million for all the years. And if you take that as a percentage of the estimated fully funded reserve amount, which Doug alluded to this morning, you can see the percentages that come out, 21%, and it varies. We got a couple years that are around 19%, which is slightly below, I guess, the 22 to 28% target, I guess, that was adopted several years ago. So that's kind of where it shakes out.
Thank you, Steve. So obviously, as we learned this morning and we talked through the process, these numbers, a lot of them are a guide, they're best guess estimates. So we're kind of in the ballpark. Obviously, the irrigation system, I think, did you touch on that? Obviously, that has an effect on this thing, one way or the other. The inflation factor has an effect. But we're kind of in the ballpark. Nothing here alarmed me when we first did it, even the first pass. But we're here for BNF. What say you?
So in your expenditures here, this would include the irrigation in these numbers, okay?
Yes.
So your percentages are going to obviously
Yes.
increase.
Well, again,
If you don't do it.
Right. Right.
Steve, on your new capital, the funded value, I guess you're figuring what, 10%, is that? Is that coming out of reserves, or is it just 10% coming from new capital? Coming out of reserves?
No. You want
It's going into the new capital fund.
From reserves?
No, it's from the assessment.
So, I'm sorry, can I just, because this is an excellent question. This is a good point. We got to make sure we got this right. Right. So it kind of does, what Dick's saying is it kind of just never got in there, but yeah, we're lowering what would have went in there, you're right.
Let me just finish up. So if it's just, you're saying the board will authorize 10% as an estimate projection, and that money would come from an assessment. It would not come out of reserves to fund that in this spreadsheet.
Wait. Okay, wait. Then maybe I just need to. So if we were to put in this past year, maybe I got the mechanics wrong, but if we were to put in this year that we calculated that the replacement reserve for general was going to be $2 million, did we not put 1.8 in there and put the other 200,000 into new capital? So to me, it's like we are funding it from the reserves. It just never got in there. But we're lowering the amount we're putting in the reserves by it. So it's the same thing. So I feel Dick's right with what he's saying, kind of. Yeah. Right. It just never got in there, which is Steve's point. But you're right.
We're fully funding all the depreciation, a portion of that depreciation is going over the new capital.
Right. So it's kind of like only funding 90% of the depreciation in the replacement is what Steve's saying. So if we had put the whole piece there, we probably would have been fully within the 22 to 28, right? You want me to do it as an example?
So we have the reserve balance starting 3,852, that's what we know is starting balance. And so we're putting into reserves so much money for the next year. So out of the 4.74745, that does not include a deduction for a portion going over to new capital. Okay, so if in fact you took the money out of reserves to fund new capital, you basically would reduce these numbers.
So, and I'm going to ask Steve to go on the mechanics of this, but here's how it worked. Here's what I'm trying to answer your question with what just happened in the last year. And a simple example is this. If we were going to fund or contribute or depreciation $2 million in this past budget, and that's what the calculation was, the board said was it the full 10%?
Up to 10.
Okay, so for my simple example, and I don't know if they went all the way to 10, let's say it was 10%. The $2 million that would have went into general replacement in this past year, only 1.8 went into the replacement reserve because we used the other 200 in new capital. Thus, you didn't increase your assessment because you kind of took it from what would have gone into the pool of replacement reserve. Is that where you're all getting lost? Because I get it.
I follow that part.
Okay, so what? Now his mechanics. I don't know how he did his mechanics though. We got to ask Steve.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. So if you have the $2 million that you pull in from assessments for the purpose of reserves, just call it, and then you break down that total amount, then I do basically your transfer of your assessment into this pot, into that pot. So, you know, you're only transferring the $1.8 million. It's not technically deducted.
Your base is fixed and you're growing in transfer.
Right.
But, as Doug just said, it's up to 10%.
Correct.
10% every year. The board could choose to put in only 2% or nothing.
Correct. Right.
Okay. So in other words, so if you, this 100, if you look at the 21, 22 new capital reserve, that 180, if you added that back, that was taken out to the what, the 1647, that's what would have went in there, correct? So each year, you're assuming 10% is going to go in for purposes of this exercise. Yeah, no. But at any point, the board could come in and say, we're not going to put anything in because we want to up this percentage.
Well, we're looking at recommendations from the B&F committee, from the general manager.
For new
to say,
capital.
Look
Right.
at the strategic plan and go, do we anticipate any capital expenses that are required for operations this year? And if the answer is no, then you adjust it and say, well, then we don't need to really fund, you know, the new capital reserve this year, and we'll move that money or leave that money in the general reserve.
Yeah, or B&F could say, or anybody, John could say, you know, look, we're down to
Right.
18% here in what, 2024.
And that's,
we don't want to go down
that's
that
the
low.
guidance
Let's
we'd be
not
looking
put
for.
any in
John may
new
say,
capital.
Exactly.
I'm not comfortable with
Exactly.
18%.
Yeah. So that's it. So you got it? Yeah. 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 I mean, this ties it all together. So that's where we're at. We're somewhere in that 20% over the next several years. There are some things, as Dick and Steve and everybody pointed out, with the irrigation that could go either way. We're kind of in the ballpark. And we're funding new capital kind of out of it, right? And we just went through that. So that's where we're at. Obviously, if B&F feels we should be funded more, we would be looking at possibly a higher contribution number than what we calculate, and or we can call it depreciation. Any questions on that? And again, this is no roads, this is no bulkheads.
So what it's saying is we're at the low end of the recommended funded percentage we should be at.
Correct. if not a little bit
Here's
over.
what we're going to be there for 5 years at that range. And if that's a comfortable range, I guess that's the question, is that a comfortable range or not? Throwing out the BNF.
He's asking me now. Yeah, he's asking me now.
Does the $600,000 irrigation get us to the 22%?
Yeah. So I don't have the mechanics. We looked at this weeks and weeks ago, and Steve's giving me the little nod. Yes. Yeah. And that's why we're not, and we don't know what's going to happen with that, Amy, right? I mean, I have an opinion. I'm sure we got 10 different opinions of what we should do, but right, correct. If we go with the outside proposed system from waste treatment, right, then we would definitely be in the 22.
It's $600 a year for
5 or 6 years. Yeah, and if I can just add something on that is this. When the estimates that we received in that last town hall, right, it was 2.8 million. It was 2.8 million for the system. It was about 500,000 or 600,000 to get the water here. So obviously, if we did our own system, it would be the 2.8 or the 3 or whatever. The thing is, when you do it over time, it's going to cost you a lot more, and it could be other problems. We may not be able to get the same contractor, the same equipment. So there's questions on that also.
So it's in the low 20s. And then adjustments are made. I'm personally comfortable in that particular range. That's my opinion. Well, I'm seeing it 600 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's under the assumption that, good.
Yeah, that's under the assumption that we don't do that.
Nobody does anything to adjust it in year 2 or 3 after getting some more data. We might decide, you know what? This is what we thought we were going to do, but now we want to, there's a sentiment in the community to push that number up, and the GM supports it. Okay, then let's not contribute as
Right.
much to the capital reserve
Right.
as we thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at the. You want to still go, or you want me to say?
George, I think I'm with you. If in fact that doesn't happen and we get to the 18, 19, I'm a little bit concerned there. But if it's at the 22, let's say, percent number, I don't know what it'll be, but that's a number that I could live with, 22%.
What new capital items could we have? Think about it. I think most of it's been done. The gates, I was thinking about the gates. That recreational pier, that was 30,000. Digital signage,
That's a big number.
digital signage.
You know, at one point, they were talking about exercise equipment and seating along the path around the South Pond. I mean, you could open up a Pandora's box of wish list items.
John, take a deep breath. Mailboxes. Cluster box units.
I almost made it. I almost made it. But you're right. You are right.
Sorry.
We will need to address the mailbox.
At least we're laughing.
So, cluster mailbox. And I think for Doug Green, I'd like your input on something, Doug. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. There's over 350 homeowner and condo associations in the United States. There's got to be someone else that is grappling with this issue of having to turn over the previous postal assets, the cluster boxes and all that, to the HOA. And I'm wondering, in some of your proprietary software that you have, do you have that data in there? Do you have a homeowners association that has cluster boxes and that you project them out into the future?
We normally actually do include cluster boxes, even though they have been historically
May I? So look, cluster boxes, no cluster boxes, future, whatever. What I'm going to ask this BNF team, and it's obvious that this keeps coming up, which is fine, and I think you're all aware now, it's not in the budget for this year. It wasn't approved by the board. We are maintaining where we can. What I think, Tom, to be honest with, is you need to get some understanding on the cost of this to put it all in perspective. But outside of that, this is up to the board. Whatever, it's not in this budget. Could possibly be in there. Obviously, it's not in here. But you're right. It's new capital. It's new. But do you have any semblance on what type of numbers you're talking about?
Well, back in 2018, the Natural Assets Committee did a study, and that was given to us in January, February of this year when we put the budget together to consider maintenance. The first figure that was given to us was $157,000 to start maintenance on the worst ones. But that wasn't taking them over. That was just a projection out to 2037 on if we had to repair. And what that amounted to was an $8 per year increase in the assessment to each homeowner for the club, for all those assets. I might add, in the park, we have our own mail pavilion. We don't have a dog in this hunt, but still in all, neither do the Points Reach. Their mailboxes are internal, but
the individual homes.
South Point, when that was built, they added cluster boxes to existing cluster boxes. Whereas in their DRs, they could have had individual mailboxes in front of their houses, and they didn't do that. Probably because the post office was going towards cluster boxes for economy. One truck goes and services 50 rather than stop and go of their equipment in front of each and every house. So we got that. And we also know now that a developer that's building a development has to pay for the cluster boxes and has to pay for their maintenance going forward. The only way they could do that would be to turn it over to an HOA. So I called Marvin Steen, and he says, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to put those in, but it'll be a year before I do that. And so that's something he's going to do. But those 30 homes are not going to have an HOA. They're a part of ours, a master HOA. So this is a topic that we've really got to dig into.
Yeah, so, and you're right, as far as the maintenance, I've been, and obviously we do not have a team in place to do this type of work, and we don't have the manpower. Last year, we did not fill 5 positions alone in Public Works, right, when we tried to get our assessment. And you are correct. To the estimates we have, and I'm actually starting to go around to see which ones they are exactly. We have a list. Probably to maintain them, to fix them, whatever term you want, it would probably be $150,000 to $180,000 a year, correct? And especially the next year to get those in line. That's just maintaining them. Use the term fixing them or whatever. That's the ballpark, and obviously that would be operational. If that's what you're talking, that's the ballpark that we have right now. We are putting something together in anticipation of somebody asking us. I certainly want to be ready. When you say Marvin going forward, but right, well, we're not going forward. We were under an existing plan, and I understand you're saying it'll make it more efficient for the post office, and I'm happy for the post office, but we're paying for the freight on that, is what you're saying. I mean, and if that's what the board, wants, we'll work it up. I'm already working on that, but, I hear you, but there is a big cost involved in this thing. That's why I just want to make sure BNF, which you should be aware of.
The community survey, were there questions to the owners about mailboxes or anything? I'm trying to think. I know I filled it out.
Josh, So he wants to know on the survey, Josh, that the strategic planning is doing, were there questions on there about the mailboxes for the association? Yeah, I don't, I filled it out myself. I don't remember seeing it.
But you had an optional area to put in verbiage on what you wanted or what you thought would be.
I think there was some multiple choice on some improvements that you might like to see, and there was
nothing.
Then there was another.
So you're probably right, there was another, but Josh is checking as we speak, and he's saying there's nothing specific.
No, there is a place where you can fill it.
Right, which is what Brian said.
We do have a few
Right.
responses based on that.
No, you better get on there and fill out.
I'm gonna have to say.
How many you need, Tom?
Okay, all right. Well, Mr. Chairman?
So you're 160 roughly on that.
That's just for repairing, fixing, that's not replacing all these clusters or whatever.
So that's not, if a handful go bad, that's not just replacing them as they go along, that's just caring for them.
That's just caring for them, right? Or if something, like for instance, the pedestal, which we've established could cost us $500 per pedestal. Some of them are rusted. That's been pointed out to me. Then it's full replacement of those. Some, and again, we're going to go around. I want to look at them. It depends. Each one's going to be different. But this is not replacing them fully or anything like that. That's just trying to get up to wherever somebody's saying, hey, maybe it's leaking or maybe something else. It's mostly these pedestals that rusted.
Previously, B&F's conclusion that cleaning up the mailboxes was a high priority item on the list as we talked about. Cleaning up could be cleaning up, making sure they look fresh and they're painted and so forth. And people don't put stickers and tags all over them, tape and things like that. Then there was also a component of that where we said let's put canopy roofs over these. B&F at that time said, no, we don't think canopy roofs is a wise investment. But we did believe that having the structured mailboxes, clean presentation of structured mailboxes was a high priority. And I don't think that'll change. I think we'll still.
Yeah, and you did bring that forward, and please keep in mind that's the board then has to decide exactly what we came forward with the budget. I said I would fix them wherever we got phone calls that we were going to do one as an example, which we did in High Sheriff, where we learned a lot about it, and I think I got the costs on that and what exactly was involved. So we've done that. We go out there and do what we can if one of them fails. In the meantime, look, I understand your points, and it sounds like all of you or some of you that you feel, and maybe there's board members, and if there's 4 board members, so be it, that you feel we should just take these over, and it's fine. If we're going to take them over, I think the post office should at least get them up to speed before we take them over. I've been told, and I wasn't here 50 years ago or 20 years ago, that the reason we did it was kind of like what Tom said, was that the post office said back then it would be easier for them than to go door to door. So, look, whatever the board tells me, obviously I will march to those orders.
I think we should push back to the post office and get 50% back in money from us from now.
Thank you, Don.
We got some involvement.
Exactly, and this is what I'm trying to relay to B&F every month is like, you're going to make it easy?
Well, no, I think we've been saying that too.
But you're on video every time we do this.
One of the things I've said in the past.
Say what I just said?
Is that maybe it's worth having an attorney spend a few hours looking at different HOAs out there that have suits against the federal government and see if there was any kind of negotiated or settlements out there for something that happened many, many years ago that now is being sued by an HOA some 30 years later. And maybe because it's so long that maybe there's some liability in the post office and maybe they're willing to negotiate and kick something in. At the end of the day, if they're not willing to kick something in, you know, we gotta do something.
I'll just add, they're gonna be involved one way or the other when we do new mailboxes. We gotta follow their requirements. They're gonna be in charge of the locks and the keys.
And they're gonna tell you how to spend more money too.
And they may even offer to maintain them for a fee, of course, right? Because they want them to be a certain way. So why not, why shouldn't they contribute to an improvement plan or an upgrade plan?
And the only thing there, Brian, is if they care about what they look like, then why wouldn't they do something with them now?
Well, I can say based on the correspondence we've had between ourselves and the postmaster, they want to drop it like a hot potato. They keep saying, these are your mailboxes, we'll maintain them, and so on and so forth. So maybe the idea of getting a legal opinion on that would maybe serve as a catalyst for them to maybe engage in the discussions a little bit more. You know, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. At the end of the day, if they own them, we own them. At the end of the day, we got to finalize it. We can't keep throwing it up in the air and juggling it, going. In the meantime, we're spending money to maintain it when maybe we should, or maybe we don't have to. You know, so I just want to get to the point where who owns it? Okay, that's it. No, I mean you're talking about an expense under the GM's authority. If we just say, hey, we can have consensus and go, let's open up a dialogue. You know, because we haven't had any success with the current postmaster.
You're talking, you know, millions of dollars of investment here.
Exactly.
Build this thing, so there's
This
gotta
could be
be
$2 million.
that some people said, you know, push back. Maybe there's some helpful information.
Well, so, I mean, we got past the what was the individual called? The regional growth manager or something like that?
Growth manager.
Yeah, you know, and we got to that level within the United States Postal Service, and again, bureaucracy and doubt is all we got.
What's a growth manager?
That's their terminology for somebody that they can forward a disgruntled customer to that sounds like he's important and can be the decision maker.
Okay, so I look, and every month we go to, in Tom, you know, you're doing great work on this stuff, but do you understand the point I'm making here is that it's like, well, and I've made that jumped up and down, but the other thing is, you know, you're telling me I own them, we own them, us own them, whatever. You're making it easy for them. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, then how do we make it hard for them?
You want me to answer? Oh, to start off with,
Torches and pitchforks down to the post office?
So let me give you a scenario. It snows in December. A truck takes out a whole group of them. People don't have their mail. Immediately, the post office is going to give them post office boxes in the main post office as a temporary situation. Who's going to replace them? Now, if a truck hit them, there's insurance involved and somebody's getting reimbursed. But there you have a situation. What do? Common interest community, HOAs, are responsible to maintain the property values of the residents. And to me, maintaining the cluster box units, the way they look is very important to the property values. And if you read social media, if you looked at the candidates, board candidates, they talked about that. And I know we're still up in the air on that, but it's a possibility you may get a decision on the 15th that the candidates, there could be more of those people who are likely to want them fixed by the HOA become board members, and therefore they can make a more informed decision.
I'd just like to go back to the comment you made about the example that you gave. I'd like to take that one to the post office. In other words, say a truck runs into these mailboxes. You're going to establish P.O. boxes at the main post office. Okay. Next step, who replaces it? And get them to answer that question. Who? Do you replace it? Do we replace it? Do you replace it? We maintain it? Do you have a vendor that you have to certify? Nobody's answered that. That's the question I would pose to them. Who? What's the next step? Who replaces it?
So,
That would help. I would phrase
So can I just, I do have Doug Green on the clock. This surfaces every month, every time. So all I'm asking is this, and I've told you this, Dick, with your budget and finance. This is great stuff. You have a liaison. This is a committee. The committee should be going to the liaison. The liaison should take it to the board. I would think this has probably been thoroughly discussed at the board because I'm in what, the 11th month or whatever the year, or 6th month of the year, and I hear it every month. I'm doing what is in the budget, what the board approved me to do. I can do, we'll continue to do that. The board liaison has to go to the board, and then the board has to instruct the GM. And, I try to put out there the cost and all this stuff and whatever. But as far as that, that's how this works right now. And I'm being honest. I mean, I don't know what else you want me to do. Okay?
I don't think we're asking.
There's no action on your part.
No, every month I get, what do you do? Okay. Well, then, okay, that's good. Okay.
That's the path you're following.
Okay, all right. We all get it now? Brian, you get it? Okay, good. All right, so Doug is here. Doug, what I'm asking is that you've heard us. Hopefully you were able to hear us. Can you hear me? Doug, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we went through the overall general replacement. Steve went through the 5-6 years. We're at anywhere from 19 to 21% of what would be expected. I mean, last time you gave us some guidance on that. Is there anything you want to add or say, or if B&F wants to ask you any questions on this? It seemed like they're comfortable with it, but I just want them to, if they have any questions, to ask me. Okay, so they don't have any questions. So Doug, where do you see us compared to other homeowners associations? I mean, you did touch on this 4 years ago. We're kind of there. Obviously, the inflation factor, whatever percentage we use there, has an effect on this. What's your guidance to us, or just your point, or what you see?
Well, I think you need to
The door's open. Hey, Doug, can we pause for a second? We're going to try to shut a door here.
Yeah, that wall, that door's gonna make a big difference.
Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I think I would project that you should regularly increase the contributions to the general reserves. I don't think that you're in I don't think there's any kind of problem with the general reserves. I think there are certainly, part of the equation is always you look at things and priorities change and new information comes up and are going to affect the number of these projects going forward. But I think that the funding structure for the general reserves is reasonable and to be maintained relatively easily. I am concerned, I've expressed it before, I'm concerned about not having a dedicated funding source for the road reserves. You asked about the roads, my own comment was, or my own observation was that, yes, a lot of your roads are in very good condition as I looked at them, except for all the work that seems to be being done in that primarily for utility work, but a lot of them are in good condition. A lot of them are fairly old, and so in projecting repaving dates, I extended the useful life of those roads, but still ended up with as you saw, a large number of roads within the next 10 years. I don't know how they will age. I was being just conservative just because of the age of the roads that are there, but they did look, for the most part, pretty good. So it's possible that those lives can be extended. But I am concerned that there isn't a funding stream, a dedicated funding stream for that. On the bulkheads, that was, the funding plan for the bulkheads was responding to the replacement years that Public Works gave me. So, and they were showing a lot of replacement work in the next 6 or 7 years. So that's why we were showing So that would be my primary concern. And I didn't see any immediate concerns in the general reserves.
Okay. You know, let's say you.
I think we're saying we're okay with the percentage.
Thank you. All right, so BNF is pretty much signed off on it. Anybody in the audience have any questions? Nothing? Josh, did we get any calls or anything? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sure. What?
The maintenance is there, and they're not replacement costs.
So, and again, this was policy set a long, long time ago by the board or whatever. They're funding it as they go. So that's kind of the replacement. It's just funded as they go. They do not have a reserve for it. You just, whatever money I have, whatever money we have, we do it. And then if there's an emergency, depending on what type of year we have, that could, put us negative, and then possibly an assessment increase. It's, we're not reserving for it. Just like if you have a roof on your house that lasts 20 years and it costs $20,000, some people put $1,000 a year away, maybe not, and then others don't do anything until the year it happens, it's $20,000. That's a policy, though. That would be at the board level.
Thank you and your team very much for doing it. Thank you, guys.
Okay, I think that wraps it up, Doug.